3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Live from the Play Show Yet Not Overly Ostentatious studios of the Infinity Sports Network here in beautiful New York City, sitting on top of the 10th floor of 345 Hudson Street. Welcome on into what is a Thursday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all the great local Infinity Sports Network affiliates, Sirius XM, Channel 375, the free Odyssey app, and of course streaming live on YouTube. 855-212-4227 is the number to jump on in. That's 855-212-4227. You could always get at me on Instagram, where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter, at Zach Gelb. That's ZACHGELB. Jeremy Roenick is going to join us, the Hockey Hall of Famer, coming up in 40 minutes from now. We'll get his thoughts on The second installment in this Four Nations face-off between USA and Canada, and this is in the championship round coming up later tonight. Dunne, the founder of Go Long, is going to join us coming up at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific time. And then we will talk at 4:40 p.m. Eastern time today, 1:40 p.m. Pacific with Dr. Brandon Erickson. And if we're ever bringing a doctor on this show, it's not good news, because that means I need a lot of clarity on something that I just don't understand. And that's where we start the show today. So according to Shams Charania, Victor Wembanyama is going to be out for the rest of the season, and he has a form of a blood clot in his right shoulder. So he's out for the season, and the San Antonio Spurs believe this is an isolated condition. Now, I'm going to make this about myself for a second, and this is going to sound incredibly tone-deaf and incredibly selfish. I totally acknowledge that when I'm saying this. So about a week ago, I got the heads up from management, hey, you're probably going to San Antonio for the Final Four. So they're probably going to have you do the show out there in San Antonio on that Thursday and Friday of Final Four week. So a buddy of mine growing up as a kid, when he was a senior in college or a junior in college, his parents moved to San Antonio and they opened up a restaurant, a delicious restaurant. And they knew that both their kids, their twins, were going to go attend UT, University of Texas. So they wanted to get the in-state tuition. So they lived in Texas for like 3 years when they were younger. So they moved back there. So I know through the restaurant, he has a lot of connections. And he also is a bunch of Spurs players go to the restaurant. And he is a season ticket holder for the San Antonio Spurs. So I hit him up, right? My friend's father, who I'm close with. And I said, hey, I'm in town, or I'm going to be in town in all likelihood for the Final Four. I got to get to a Spurs game when I'm there. And they play that Friday night. They play that Friday night of the Final Four weekend. So you had the game on Saturday and Monday in San Antonio. And he goes, I got tickets, no worries, we'll go Spurs and Cavs. So I was so jacked up and so fired up to go. And I go to a ton of sporting events. And, you know, it's going to sound like we're spoiled, and I understand it may sound like I don't appreciate it. I get to go to a lot of big games. It's awesome. But sometimes when you go to these games, you may not be as excited walking in. But there are a few players that I get really excited about, and I would even spend my own money. Like if I hit up my friend's father and he's like, hey, I don't got tickets or I have to take other people, I would have spent whatever it took to get in the building because I want to see Victor Wembanyama live. And he's one of the players in sports right now that I don't care what the price of admission is, he's worth the price of admission. Like if you're in San Antonio or if he's coming to your city and you have the time and you have finances, right, you're going to want to go see a player like Victor Wembanyama because the way that his body is designed, it's almost as if he's not real. I've said this before. When I got to see Victor Wembanyama once in person for his pre-draft press conference, and I got a chance to talk to him, he came in a jumpsuit, and when he sat down, he just looked like a floating head. He looks like an alien, for crying out loud. So I was really looking forward to April being able to see Victor Wembanyama play for the San Antonio Spurs. But now, on a more serious note, he is going to be out for the season, and he has a form of a blood clot in his right shoulder. So first and foremost, we hope he's going to be okay. I know the initial reporting by Shams is the Spurs believe this is an isolated condition. So we hope that he recovers, he comes on back, right? You know, Christian Barrymore of the Patriots, I don't know if this is similar, but he had a blood clot this past year that we found out about. He returned towards the end of the season. So this says that Wemby's going to be out for the rest of the season. And I hope that this is something that not only doesn't linger for his career, but doesn't linger for, more importantly, his life. Because I know that we're focused on Victor Wembanyama, the player. You also got to be focused on the serious matter here in Victor Wembanyama, the person. So such unfortunate news. And I'm not a doctor. That's the most accurate thing I've ever said on the radio. But I've been reading about since February this illness and these allergies that Victor Wembanyama's been having. And he missed a game, you know, not that long ago because of illness, even on this injury report the other day. And now we know that he has a form of a blood clot. He was listed with an undisclosed illness. And I'm like, something doesn't seem right there. And the more and more I was reading about it, because it wasn't the first time I heard about it, I was reminded, right, that they made that trip back in January to France, and they played 2 games there. And ever since coming back, he's been dealing with an illness that Wembanyama's been saying are allergies. This was an article from February 1st at NBA.com. Allergies, Wembanyama responded when asked if he was ill. Since we came back from France, allergy has been hitting more than ever. Makes sense, but just since we came back, though, so it's getting better. So I'm not a doctor, but if I'm going to put 2 and 2 together, and maybe this is an assumption, and you know what happens when you assume, you could make an ass out of you and me. But if he's been having this illness issue that he's been saying that it's allergies, could this be related to the blood clot that he wasn't feeling well? Oh, I'm coming back from France. It's some sort of illness. Maybe it's just allergies. And when they did further testing, they eventually found, right, because it's February 20th. This article's from February 1st. 20 days later, when you keep on having this same issue, that you would think that this should go away, that it doesn't. All right, let's check it out. And then they, however, discovered that he has a form of a blood clot in his shoulder. So that's just something that did cross my mind, where I remember reading this, in early February and hearing about this, and I just thought it kind of went away. And then it popped up the other day that he has this illness, and I was reading one fan account that was like, isn't it bizarre that Wemby's been having this illness for a young guy, like for at least a month or over a month? And then we get this unfortunate news today that Victor Wembanyama is going to be out for the rest of the season with the form of a blood clot in his right shoulder. And once again, the Spurs, and I hope this is right, they believe that this is just an isolated condition. So this sucks for the NBA. And this sucks, obviously, for Victor Wembanyama. That goes without saying it. But even though the Spurs probably weren't going to make the postseason this year, they're a few games under 500, you don't have that many draws in the regular season for the NBA. You don't have many moments where you're like, okay, I want to see this player, and I'm expecting this player to play, and then you get blown away by this player. And you look at the big picture here. We lived in an NBA era for the last 2 decades where everything about the league, like there's been other champions, right? We've seen the Warriors win. We've seen the Celtics win. We've seen the Milwaukee Bucks win. We've seen other teams win. But for the last 2 decades, the NBA has been run by LeBron James with his 2 decades of excellence in this league, and LeBron is now 40. Well, on the NBA All-Star game on that Sunday, like 2 hours before the game, LeBron James comes on out and he goes, hey, guys, I'm not playing. I need to heal up my body. I have some discomfort, and I'm gearing up for a long, hopefully, postseason run in the Wild West. I'm not playing. So in the moment, right, you could say, oh, well, if LeBron is hurt, why are you going to play in a meaningless All-Star game? But then you find out that their first game back, the Lakers, LeBron in a loss last night to Charlotte, he ends up playing, I think, like 38 minutes in the game. So how injured can LeBron James actually be? So what I'll just say with LeBron is I could put 2 and 2 together here. LeBron played 38 minutes last night. LeBron didn't play in the All-Star game. LeBron James just didn't want to play in the All-Star game. That's the reality of the situation. And I don't think I'm out of bounds for assuming that. But with that being said, if you are the face of the league, you got to play in the All-Star game. Just showing up and not getting into your jersey and then taking a photo with other guys isn't sufficient enough for me. And if you're hurt, you're hurt. But if you're hurt and you can't play on Sunday, when everyone gives a dog bleep effort anyway in the All-Star game, you're telling me you're coming back on Wednesday and basically playing a full game? So it's just not believable in terms of that LeBron James, because of the injury, couldn't play in what is pretty much a slap-you-know-what All-Star game, if we're just being honest. So now, we've had this baton in LeBron's hands for years. I don't think, here's my hot take of the day, that LeBron James is going to win another NBA championship. So even though LeBron could maybe play for another year or two, we're reaching the end of the road of the LeBron James reign. And I think we've already seen the apex of the LeBron James run, because he's not going to win another championship. He's not going to win another league MVP. And this guy's not even, well, he showed up, but he didn't play in the All-Star game. So LeBron, who's been the face of the NBA for basically the last 2 decades and has accomplished more than any of us could really imagine, right? And there's players that would love to have like 1/16 of the success of LeBron James. So I'm not crapping on LeBron, but the reality is LeBron James is no longer the face of the NBA. And right now the NBA is faceless, when we look at who's the next face of the NBA. Because you look at some of the most recent MVP winners, like Nikola Jokic has won an NBA championship, has won multiple NBA MVPs, but when you're the face of the NBA, you either have to be like one of the top 3 greatest players of all time, and then even if you don't have the best personality, all right, being a top 3 NBA player all time can make you the face of the NBA. But usually you look for a player who's all-time great and someone that is either polarizing or has a personality. I don't think Nikola Jokic really has much of a personality, and I don't think he's polarizing. We all just acknowledge this dude is a unicorn on the basketball court, and he's an athletic freak. And he's a great player. So I'm not going to say Nikola Jokic is the face of the NBA. Joel Embiid doesn't play enough, and he doesn't win. He has the personality, and he's polarizing, but he doesn't play enough, and he doesn't win. So I can't say Embiid is the face of the NBA. Giannis Antetokounmpo, underrated personality, but too nice of a personality, in my opinion, to be the face of the NBA. And we know how great he is, and he's done everything, right? NBA championships and has won MVPs. So you go around and you try to figure out who's going to be the next face of the NBA. Is it SGA? SGA is unbelievable. He's a top 5 player in the league. I still don't know, though, if he gets the national respect that he deserves when I'm talking about from fans. So I'm going through this. Like, look at Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum, right? Outside of him having a son, Deuce Tatum, do we really know much about Jason Tatum? Great basketball player, played at Duke, won an NBA championship, didn't win the finals MVP. But we don't really know much about Jason Tatum, who's been in the spotlight now for almost a decade. So the more and more you go around, and right, you see older players like LeBron is towards the end of his run. Steph Curry's obviously up there in age. KD's probably never going to win another championship again. You're looking at who could be the next face of the NBA. And it's no longer LeBron, but we don't have a clear-cut guy right now. And the 2 guys that I could think of are Anthony Edwards and Victor Wembanyama. And unfortunately, like, Wemby has met the hype, but now we're 2 years in, and now Wemby's going to be out for the rest of the season. And even though Wemby is a unicorn and he's an alien, we don't really know much about the personality of Victor Wembanyama. Because there's a difference in being a great player and then the face of the NBA. Do I believe that Victor Wembanyama one day can become the face of the NBA because he's so one of one? Absolutely. But it's still a little too early to tell. And a day like this kind of reminds you, you could be a great player and you get a bad bill of health, and that could derail your career. And I hope that this is just an isolated incident. And obviously, I hope that Victor Wembanyama is going to be all right. But right now, he's a form of blood clot in his right shoulder. So I don't know what to expect. So I'll tell you, like someone like Luka Doncic, if you would have told me about 2 weeks ago Luka Doncic could be the next face of the NBA, I'd be like, I'd be a top 5 player for the next decade. But in Dallas, you're probably not going to become the face of the league. Now being in LA, if we start to see more and more of Luka's personality, yeah, maybe Luka becomes the face of the NBA. But the player that I go back to, and I know he hasn't won a championship yet, but he is a great player. He's a top 10 player in the league. He just started to win a little bit last year. I know he didn't get to a championship game, and I know he didn't win the NBA Finals, but he's a great player on the court, and he's got a big personality. And it's ironic that I'm going to mention him because just the other day at the All-Star game, he was like, yeah, I don't want to be the face of the league. He actually said, that's what we have Wemby for. Now, I don't know how much I believe him, but Anthony Edwards, to me, right now, I think would be in the number 1 spot if you're looking for the next decade of who's going to be the next face of the NBA, with his ability to throw it down with the thunderous slams, the range that he has in his game, but then also more importantly, he has a big-time star personality. And I could see Anthony Edwards being the next face of the NBA. Stu, if I take Anthony Edwards off the table, and I know I just threw out a bunch, and I'm sure there's a few that I missed, who do you think is potentially the next face of the NBA with LeBron kind of skipping out of the All-Star game, then playing 38 minutes on Wednesday, looking to basically pass the baton towards the end of his road and his reign in the NBA?
I think it's Luka Doncic. And that answer might have been different 3 weeks ago, but now he's in LA with the premier franchise of the league.
No.
In the market of Los Angeles. I think that personality is only going to be made bigger by LA.
Sure.
And once LeBron goes, he's probably going to, bring other good players to the team. And I think he'll be probably regarded as the face and one of the 2 or 3 best players in the NBA 3, 4, 5 years from now.
And there could be a little polarizing factor to Luka Doncic too now. Because don't you have a little Shaq vibe with him? And obviously not the same player, but a little out of shape, enjoying himself a little bit, too much off the court. That's what big-time stars do. And, hey, even though Michael Finley was pulling a beer out of Luka Doncic's hand last year as they won the Western Conference Championship, he still got to the NBA Finals. So he's a guy that likes to enjoy himself. So I think that's a way that he could showcase his personality a little bit more. And also, now it gets exemplified even more being in Los Angeles with one of the 2 best franchises in the history of the NBA. Samter, who's your face of the NBA moving forward?
I mean, it's got to be Wemby as long as he's back. But it honestly feels like a decision based off of no other options. I love Wemby, but he's in San Antonio. When was the last time that a Spur was the face of the NBA? They're just kind of buried down there. They're not even like the biggest or the second biggest city in Texas.
Yeah, but that's been a great franchise. But in terms of like big personalities, like Tim Duncan wasn't a big personality. Tony Parker wasn't. Manu Ginobili. The Admiral wasn't. And Admiral had a good personality, but just like a very nice guy. In a weird way, from a stardom presence, and this is going to sound crazy because Tim Duncan is a top 10, top 15 player of all time, just the intrigue about Wemby, you could argue, like, it's weird to say that he's the biggest star that they've ever had, but if it all comes together for Wemby, and if he just wins one championship there, and the way that he's viewed and the unique things that he could do, that could end up being the case, even with the franchise that's just been completely littered with NBA champions and also Hall of Famers as well. But also in sports now, with how much parity there is, I think it could be an old school thinking. And when I said it with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, it's like, can you be the face of the NBA in Oklahoma City? Can you be the face of the NBA in San Antonio, right? Those things that we ask, but you don't need to be in New York now. You don't need to be in LA or Boston now to be the face of the NBA. Because, hey, I know LeBron's in LA now, and LeBron's different, but wherever LeBron was, he was the face of the league. The Knicks haven't had the face of a league in forever, right? So I think with the parity level of it, as long as you're great and you have a big personality, like, hey, Minnesota's not the greatest market in the world, biggest market in the world, but a guy like Anthony Edwards can become the face of the league. So those are our guesses. I have Anthony Edwards, Stu has Luka Doncic, and Samter, I guess, begrudgingly takes Victor Wembanyama. All right, this is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We'll take a break. When we come on back, Aiden Hutchinson reveals details of his conversation with Myles Garrett, and the Hall of Famer, Jeremy Roenick, is going to stop by 20 minutes from now.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Listening to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
Alrighty, welcome back in. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. So we're waiting to see what's going to happen with Myles Garrett. I know the Browns are basically saying, hey, for now, we're not trading him. You know, I heard Diana Rossini do an interview the other day, and she said originally it was the Browns said we're not trading him. And then it turned into we're not trading him for now. So that seems like when you say for now, that means you're not trading him today. You're not trading him this week. You're going to allow these negotiations to play on out because there's going to be a market for him and you're going to pin one team up against another and so on and so on. So you can get the most back for a player who is either the first or second best defensive player in the league, right? When we look at who's the best defensive player in the league, I know Pat Surtain won the Defensive Player of the Year, and I think he's a preeminent cornerback in the NFL. But year in and year out, either Myles Garrett or TJ Watt are the best players on the defensive side in the NFL. So you could definitely get a first-round pick. I think you could definitely get 2 first-round picks. But it's how much more can you get for Myles Garrett? And I would say this. I would call up the Washington Commanders, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Detroit Lions, and the Buffalo Bills. Those 5 teams. You have 5 teams right there. 2 have already won championships. Eagles, right, just won this last one. The Chiefs have won 3. Buffalo's looking to win a championship. The Lions are right there looking to win a championship, and the Commanders, since they got Daniel Snyder out of there, all of a sudden, they are a new and improved franchise, and they have their face on the offensive side of the ball, who's really the face of the entire team in Jaden Daniels, but now you need that bookend, that face on the defensive side of the ball, and if your bookends can be, hey, on the offense, it's Jaden Daniels, and on the defense, it's Myles Garrett, the Commanders become a real happening and real bumping destination. And all 5 of those teams have an ability to do what Myles Garrett wants, and that's to go win a Super Bowl. And could you get a team like the Ravens in play? I'm sure you can, right? There's a bunch of teams there that you could probably get, like 31 teams should be interested in Myles Garrett. But also, who are the Browns going to be interested in trading? Like, I throw the Ravens out there. Do I think that the Browns are going to want to see Myles Garrett go from Cleveland inside the division to Baltimore? Probably not. And that's why when I look at those 5 teams, Commanders, Eagles, Lions, out of conference. But if you're okay with trading them in conference, Chiefs and the Bills are 2 teams that definitely could ring a bell here in this situation. So you could get, obviously, 31 teams interested, but you could probably create a healthy market where you would be okay trading him with like 8 teams that also he's going to be happy with. Because that's the other part of it. If Myles Garrett is serious about winning, which when we had a conversation with him at the Super Bowl, I walked in with kind of a preconceived notion where I hear athletes say all the time, I want to win. And I threw out that destination like Atlanta. If he gets traded to Atlanta, does that come off to a destination that is actually a championship destination? No. But you could have Myles Garrett say, oh, well, Atlanta, they're young, they're up and coming. You know, you could talk yourself into explaining that's a championship destination when the rest of us know that it isn't. So when I look at this, I do believe that we'll have an answer within 2 months. All right, today is February 20th. I think by the end of April, when the NFL draft is here on April 24th, I would be more surprised than not if he's not dealt by the end of the first round. Because one of those picks, I think you want to know where they're going to be. Now, you could argue, like we talked about earlier this week, if you're trading with teams that are creme de la creme Super Bowl contenders and you give them the benefit of the doubt, like, does it really matter if you get the 28th pick this year or if you get the 29th pick this year? So maybe you roll the dice and you could wait till after the draft because you're going to get 2 first-round picks in all likelihood from a team that's probably going to have a really good season either way. So anyway, one of those teams we mentioned are the Detroit Lions. The Lions need help on their defense. Now, also, I think the Lions will be better next year on defense because they're going to get a lot of guys back. They suffered a bevy of injuries this year, and unfortunately, eventually those injuries caught up against the Washington Commanders. Well, Aiden Hutchinson, who's the face, you could argue of that team. You know, he's definitely the face of the defense, but I think Aiden Hutchinson is a bigger face than Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Penei Sewell, but he's a lineman. Like, linemen aren't usually the face of the team. Yeah, Aiden Hutchinson, he's one of those defensive players that is the face of the team. And there's not a ton of them in the NFL. Like, even Micah Parsons, he's the best player on the Cowboys, but I still think when people think of the Cowboys, they think of Jerry. And if they think of a player first, it's Dak. Myles Garrett, was the face of the Browns. TJ Watt right now is the face of the Steelers. So I would say Aiden Hutchinson is the face of the Lions. And this is what he said on the Squeeze podcast about possibly teaming up with Myles Garrett.
If me and Myles were to pair up, that would be deadly.
I don't know if we've seen anything like it.
I know. I was talking to him. We were at the honors, and we were just talking about what could be, and although it's probably unlikely, I think I would be thrilled to play next to him if it were to happen. But our whole D line would be like just totally elevated. That'd be a scary defensive line, and we get along too. I think you texted me after I got hurt, which I don't know, it was just a cool thing. Like, guys outside of your own team who reach out to you. I think. So I think he's a good dude. If he does, great. But I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see. But that would be awesome.
Well, the Lions should definitely pursue it. Right? You have a year to 3 years of a championship window here. And if you don't win a championship within the next 3 years, sure, right, with Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell built, it could be sustainable. But if you don't strike when it's hot, right, then you never know if you're ever going to be able to get back there. Like, look at the Niners, for example. The Niners have been right there, and we're starting to wonder if that window has kind of closed. Even people did it before this year with Buffalo, and I know Buffalo didn't win a championship this year, but they've been close and they couldn't get the job done. The Ravens have been close and couldn't get the job done. And sometimes you need that piece to push you over the top of the mountain, to get to the top of the mountain. And you usually don't see in the NFL like dynamic duos at the same position. You have it at wide receiver because it's such a pass-heavy league. Obviously, I have two good running backs, but it's not usually two elite names. Like, you're not having Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry on the same team. Now, wide receivers, right, you could have a Tyreek Hill and a Jaden Waddle. But Waddle is a very good wide receiver. I wouldn't say he's elite. Tyreek Hill is. Right, you have A.J. Brown and you got Devontae Smith. I remember in Cincinnati, now it was towards later on in their career, remember when Chad Johnson and Terrell Owens got paired together? But you look at pass rushers, right, you could have two really great corners. But in terms of pass rushers, this would be as fun of a duo as we would have in the NFL. If on one end you have Aiden Hutchinson and the other end you have Myles Garrett, that would be awesome. So the Lions should absolutely try to pounce and get this deal done. Now let's get to A.J. Brown. He was on Kicking It with D podcast, and this is what A.J. Brown had to say on one player he'd want the Eagles to bring in.
Money don't matter. You could bring anybody on your team.
An unlimited salary cap is off.
I'll say Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett.
Oh, my God.
Adding him with Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what's going to happen with Josh Sweat or Milton.
Honestly, if the Eagles get Myles Garrett, I don't care if they bring back Zach Bond or not, right? Milton Williams or not, Josh Sweat or not. You have Jalen Carter there. You got Nolan Smith there. It's just some of the young group of that core. Could maybe that means that Brandon Graham comes back and is like, hey, I'll play on a cheap one-year deal, try to go win a third Super Bowl in Philly. Yeah, that's definitely a possibility as well. You get the Eagles with Myles Garrett. We just saw what they did to Mahomes. I mean, that may be night time for the 2025 season if everybody stays healthy with the amount of teams or the amount of players that are just on that team. But those are the 5 teams that I think are realistic destinations and Myles Garrett should be happy to go with. The Commanders, that would be the cherry on top of the sundae for a great and quick rebuild. You look at the Eagles, no further explanation needed. Buffalo and Detroit, it would be viewed as the missing piece. And then Kansas City, that would be the piece that you bring in, a pretty big piece that kind of says, okay, that would be their 07 Patriot move. It really would be. Like the Pats lost in 06 in the AFC Championship game. They went out and they said, okay, we're going to go get Randy Moss, and it's going to be so tough to beat us. And the Patriots almost went undefeated that year, 18-0 until the last game of the season where they lost in the Super Bowl to the Giants. If the Chiefs go get Myles Garrett, and you have Chris Jones and Myles Garrett in the same defense with George Karlaftis, we've seen really good stuff from the Chiefs defense. That would take it to a whole different level. All right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We'll take a break. We'll come on back. We'll talk a little USA and Canada, as we should be joined by the Hockey Hall of Famer, Jeremy Roenick, Jr., when we come on back. Update time first. Here's Zach.
Infinity Sports Network, Sports Flash.
And we start with a riddle sponsored by Progressive Insurance. What does your home and auto have in common? Progressive protects them both. It was an easy riddle. Learn more at Progressive.com. Victor Wembanyama, the NBA's next big star, will miss the remainder of the season due to deep vein thrombosis in his shoulder. The 21-year-old was coming off his first All-Star selection, averaging over 24 points and 11 rebounds a game, as well as 3.6 blocks, which leads the league, and because of the injury, he's now ineligible for Defensive Player of the Year. The Bucks' Bobby Portis suspended 25 games by the league for violating the drug policy. The 30-year-old mistakenly took tramadol, which is banned, instead of Toradol, which is legal. He was averaging nearly 14 points a game and over 8 rebounds. It's back to work for the NBA tonight after a week off with 9 games. The Cavaliers leading the Eastern Conference at 44-10. Brooklyn tonight, and Denver goes for its 9th in a row against the Hornets, who were coming off the win in L.A. last night. The Yankees and Aaron Boone come to terms on a 2-year extension, and the Four Nations tournament, which has been terrific, comes to an end tonight with a matchup that promises to be intense and exciting as the U.S. and Canada face off after meeting Saturday. A game that had a little bit of everything. I'm Rich Ackerman.
The Infinity Sports Network is on your smart speaker. All you have to say is, play Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Welcome back to the Zach Gelb Show.
All right, welcome back into the Zach Gelb Show. Four Nations championship round tonight, U.S. and Canada. We saw on Saturday, U.S. right in Canada take down the Canadians, which was wonderful to see. And I remember 2002, and I remember also Sidney Crosby as well. So it was nice to finally beat the Canadians, and now let's see if they could do it tonight and basically beat their asses twice in a week. Let's go out to the guest line right now and welcome in a Hockey Hall of Famer. And it's so nice to say that. Hockey Hall of Famer Jeremy Roenick, who joins us right now. JR, how you been?
I'm doing great, Zach. What's going on? I appreciate that intro. Yes, it is a magical feeling being a part of that legendary group of the Hall of Fame. And it was an amazing weekend. All good things that come to those who wait, they say, and it was well worth the wait. So it's good to be with you, my friend.
Well, it's just nice because I've done 2 to 6 a.m. Eastern time, you've joined me. When I host from 6 to 10 p.m. Eastern time, you join me. And now you join me in our afternoon drive program. And all these years I had to ask you, why aren't you in the Hall of Fame? And I'm just glad I no longer have to ask you that, JR.
I'm glad nobody else has to ask me that, because that was the one thing that drove me nuts wherever I went, whether it was Canada, Chicago, Philadelphia, Boston, wherever I went, that was always the question. And I just got sick and tired of saying, I don't know, man. But now I don't have to say that anymore. So I'm very excited about that.
But one more on that, because it was bullcrap that they made you wait all those years. But once you get in, and that's all that matters. When you look back at it, and right now you've had to get more than a few months for it to really just sink in and really celebrate it and reflect. I know that you said there's still joy and a smile that comes to your mind when you hear Hockey Hall of Famer, but how do you process the whole experience?
It is absolutely incredible how it changes the mentality, your mentality, how it changes the way that you feel in the course of a day, how it makes you feel when you walk into an arena, how it makes you feel when you walk into a locker room. There is a presence and an aura that comes off you differently. I have a different perspective on how I'm supposed to act, who I'm supposed to be around, the decisions that I make. You know, I'm just not Jeremy Roenick, the hockey player now. I'm associated with 500 or 600 people that are enshrined in the greatest hall in sports. And I say that obviously being very, very biased, but you have a responsibility to be a Hall of Famer, and that there's a lot that goes into that. I truly love the way I feel as a Hall of Famer. I still do not get, I'm not used to writing HOF on my signatures. It's a gratifying thing. I don't care how many times I've done it. And my gratitude and how humbled and proud that I am exudes every time that I do that. And so, yeah, there's an expectation. And I will say, and I said this to one of my friends today, I used to walk into an arena, an NHL arena, and kind of be not uncomfortable, but, you know, I have had certain entities try to knock me down. I've had other entities try to mar or scar my image. I think I've done a really good job at times doing that myself. And it could have been one of the reasons why I waited so long. But I walk into an arena now and I walk in with a different attitude, because it's not Jeremy, you know, from when I played and how I acted and the things I did or how I talked or the ego. It's Jeremy Roenick 2.0. You know, and the respect factor that is given because of that Hall of Fame mentality. It's amazing. It really changes the way that I view a lot of things in my life.
No, it's wonderful stuff, and obviously it goes without saying it's well-deserved. Jeremy Roenick, the Hall of Famer, here with us. This Four Nations stuff has been awesome. What was it like for you to see the U.S. on Saturday take it to Canada?
Well, I don't know about you, but I was jumping out of my seat. I was watching it in a bar with a bunch of my friends in San Diego, and literally I was out of my seat screaming in the middle of the bar, especially because it was Matthew and Brady that started all the antics 9 seconds in. Surprised me that JT Miller and Parayko went at it right afterwards. But to start a game in 9 seconds and have 3 fights like that, we haven't seen that since New Jersey, New York, which you would expect from them. But to do it on the world stage, to do it in a tournament where I really didn't know what to expect in this Four Nations. In the middle of the season, guys are, you know, so focused on playing well for their cities. They're in a race for a Stanley Cup. And here they're taking a 2-week break to put their country's jerseys on and play for something totally different. And I couldn't be more excited or proud or relieved that we have had such good hockey, such competitive hockey, physical hockey, hockey that is full of pride, full of patriotism, that it's a different feeling than the National Hockey League. And tonight is going to be no different. It is going to be a war. It is going to be ugly. It's going to be mean. And it doesn't matter who wins in this game tonight. Obviously, both teams have a lot that they can benefit from it. I think Canada probably more than America right now, but hockey's the winner. I mean, hockey is on the front pages of every news article. It's the biggest game of the night. There's no sport that's going to be in a bigger spotlight than this game tonight. The President of the United States is calling the team. Every news entity is there in both countries. This is exciting stuff for hockey, and it's about time that they got the respect. And they're showing why hockey players are so unique. It's because they play their best hockey and their most competitive hockey and their meanest hockey when they have their country's colors on. That's fantastic.
And obviously, I want the U.S. to win today. That goes without being said. You know, I know you remember 2002, so do I. 2010 was also a killer, and I get that this isn't the Olympics, but the growth of hockey in America has been awesome. The quality of players just keep on getting better and better. And if you could find a way to beat Canada twice in a week, it would be really special for America.
It'd be really special because you're right, because the United States has really taken the biggest leap in terms of its quality of hockey. I mean, we are a world superpower, and there are a lot of people who are saying that we are at the same level, if not maybe a little bit better than Canada right now, which who would ever thought that? And I know Canada will take exception to that comment, but with what USA Hockey is doing across the country in building new programs, the National Development Program, which brings out the best hockey players in the country, moving into colleges or pro, USA Hockey is putting more of those across the country to build more interest, put more into the grassroots than Canada is. There's more politics in Canada in hockey that there are in the States, and we've been able to catch up. What happened with the World Juniors? All these things that are happening right now. Canada needs this win tonight to keep that legacy of hockey is Canada's game, right? Because I think if they lose this could be a really big blow to their psyche and to their their power, I guess, their power struggle. 1980 made me want to be a hockey player when the Olympics were won by 1980. 1996, when the boys won the World Cup, that hit a certain age player. 2002, when we went to the gold medal game, that hit a lot of people. We haven't seen these players put on their country's jersey in the last 12 years or 10 years. So it's been 10 years since we've seen the best players in the world all together put on their nation's colors. And these guys are taking it for real. This is their first opportunity to get this kind of play. And they know that they're going to hit a certain genre, a certain generation of kids that are going to watch this. They're going to say, I want to play in that game. I want to be a hockey player. And if USA can win, it's going to spur those USA kids on even more. If Canada wins, it'll probably hit another group of Canadians. But that's how important that this game is on both sides. And that's why I say hockey wins, not just Canada, not just America. This hockey wins tonight regardless.
And obviously, Jeremy Roenick, the Hockey Hall of Famer, here with us for a few more moments. We had the booing of our national anthem by the Canadians. I'm sure that favor is going to be returned tonight by a great Boston crowd. But I also saw that Brandon Hagel said, when he's talking about the Kachucks, that we're playing for the flag, not the cameras. What did you make of those comments?
Well, I think that's a dig. Number one, obviously, that's you're trying to get the anger going with the Kachucks, which, by the way, Hagel doesn't have to say anything in order to get that from the Kachucks because they are proud Americans. They do that. They do it night in, night out. They don't change because a camera's there. They don't change because a camera's not there. These kids have been bred and born to play the game a certain way, and they play it the right way. And I think this is good pregame jawing, especially by Hagel. It was nice to see him step to the plate and drop the gloves the other night, which was nice. He's fighting for his country too, but it's kind of easy or kind of hard, kind of easy to say something when you've lost already in this situation, and trying to get every aspect or ounce of edge that you can. But if he thinks that the Kachuk brothers are going to be bothered by that kind of statement, they don't know the Kachuk brothers very well. They're playing for their country. They're playing because they're proud hockey players. They're proud people, and they come from a very, very proud family that they have to represent every day. And that's what I love about them.
And I only got about 45 seconds, so a minute left for Jeremy Roenick from the No Filter Network. Hellebuck, too. We know the year he's having. He's already won the Vezina twice. The Jets have been unbelievable this year, but from a national brand recognition, he wins tonight. It's going to be a large part because of him, and that could do wonders for his career, too.
Well, unfortunately, the way I'm thinking, he has to be the main reason. USA does not win if Hellebuck isn't at his all-time best. And I say that because they got the Canadian roster, which is probably one of the best rosters that we've ever seen in international hockey. They've already lost once. It's very hard to beat a team 2 times in a row, let alone a team like this. And number 2, America's banged up.
Yeah.
They lost McAvoy on the back end, which is a fierce competitor. He's the one that knocked McDavid on his ass the other day, which obviously sent a big message. You know, there's a lot of guys that have some aches and pains on Boston. On USA, and it is going to be a deep dig and a deep grind by US if they're going to want to pull off a second win against probably one of the best rosters I've ever seen.
JR, very happy for you once again. Great that we were able to reconnect with you. Enjoy the game today, and thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate it.
There you go. The great Jeremy Roenick joining us on the show. Always love talking to him, and so happy that I don't have to just ask him anymore. Why the heck is he not getting the Hall of Fame? Because he got screwed for too many years. And I didn't like asking that question, but I always had to ask him that whenever he joined us. Great stuff with Jeremy Roenick. Can't wait for the game tonight. U.S. and Canada, going to be awesome. But coming up in 5 minutes, we'll go back to the football gridiron. Ty Dunne, founder of Go Long. He's going to join us when we come on back in a few moments.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 3 minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
Saw my guy Ty Dunne on Radio Row, one of the best NFL writers in the business. Make sure you check out his website, golongtd.com. And now joining us on behalf of Go Long, talk a little NFL offseason. With us no longer having football with us with games to look forward to is the great Ty Dunne. Ty, appreciate the time. How you been?
What's up, man? Great to see you down there in NOLA on Radio Row and out on the town as well. Briefly, we were ships passing in the night, but we made a point to make it happen. It's always great to put the face with that voice, man, that booming football god of a voice that I've heard for many a year.
I appreciate that. You know, it's funny. For a second, I'm like, where did I see Ty Dunne out? And then I started to remember it because when you get to New Orleans, I remember seeing you at Media Row. I now remember where I did see you when we were out. So appreciate you jumping on board. Let me start you off with this. Let's go with Rodgers. I feel like for the last few off seasons, Rodgers has been the biggest storyline. We know that the Jets are going to let him go. What does your gut tell you right now where Aaron Rodgers playing football next year?
I like the way you framed it because it's a gut feeling. This isn't based on specific conversations with execs, with coaches, because I think all that's going to happen next week in Indianapolis, and we'll all get a clearer picture of the situation, Zach. But I think this is Bill Belichick in quarterback form. I think that he probably wants to play, wants to start, wants to make money, and I'll be surprised if a team gives him that opportunity. I don't know how a GM, a head coach, hell, an owner can see what happened in Green Bay, can see what happened with the New York Jets, and allow Aaron Rodgers to nuke your building in the same form and fashion. Is he really going to want to start for a team at quarterback and just play quarterback? I would be shocked if that's the case for somebody that we've seen the same storyline play out again and again and again. It's bringing the buddies, whether they're coaches, whether they're players. It's pseudo GM, assistant to the assistant GM, Dwight Schrute-esque. I don't know. I mean, it's so obvious at this point, right? It's not just one of us kind of trying to explain this to people from conversations behind the scenes. It was on full public display. I would, even though there are a lot of options out there at quarterback via trade, free agency, the draft, I don't know why any team would do it.
So you think he's getting shut out completely is what you're saying?
It's a gut feeling, right? I think that it's Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick is the greatest coach ever, and nobody wanted him to come in and completely take over a building. Right? You bring in Bill Belichick, it's not just to coach the team. He's going to want to have some personnel control. We saw how his drafts ended there in New England. He left Elliott Wolf with, bare cupboards, really. There's a lot more that goes into it than just saying Aaron Rodgers is a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback. Of course he should start day one. You're bringing in a lot more than that, just like you're bringing in a lot more than just Bill Belichick coaching your defense, coaching your team. I don't know. Maybe there's a desperate owner out there, but Woody Johnson, not one of the best owners, to put it mildly. So he was duped. The Jets were duped. I don't know who will get duped again.
So I only have two destinations where I would actually want to see him. One would be Pittsburgh. And then if the Rams actually move off of Stafford, which I don't fully believe, I'd be okay linking up McVay and Rodgers for a year out in LA. How about those two spots?
I think Rodgers would probably love to go out there to LA and play for the Rams. I don't know why Les Snead and Sean McVay would want him, though. And you're right. That's where I'm at right now with the Matthew Stafford stuff, too. I get it. You've got this young defense. When they actually had draft picks, they drafted really well. Jared Verse is a beast. I mean, Kobe Turner across the whole D-line. At the same time, you have one of the best quarterbacks in football. You're really one Jalen Carter sack away from getting to and probably winning an NFC championship game and getting to the Super Bowl. I'm kind of stunned that they just can't figure it out. Maybe there's something else there that we're not privy to. I think that he, gut feeling again, probably stays with the Rams. Probably cooler heads prevail. They get to a number. And the Steelers, yeah, we all saw the wink and a nod during that Packers-Steelers game a few years back. I don't know, though. I think Mike Tomlin is too smart and has been through too many retreads, too many mistakes, post Ben Roethlisberger, really hanging on to Ben Roethlisberger a season too long. They've kind of figured out how this thing can go wrong at quarterback via draft picks, veteran pickups. It feels like Aaron Rodgers is just in that. But I don't know what the Steelers do at quarterback, but I would really be surprised if they talk themselves into Aaron Rodgers pushing them over the top in a division with Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. You never know, right? You never know. Maybe these defensive coaches think all I need is a quarterback who with some pelts on the wall to get over the hump. But I think that maybe we're reading a little too much into that image in it. And I think it was like a CBS game a few years ago, right? I don't know if there's anything there.
Talking to Ty Dunne, when you get to Sam Darnold, I don't think he'll be back in Minnesota. They're going to J.J. McCarthy. That's my feel on it. Placing Sam on a team is not easy. What do you feel right now with Sam?
You're right. He played himself into the opportunity. I know it ended terribly, right? He did turn into that pumpkin like everybody thought he would at various points during the regular season. Think back to that Jacksonville game. That was ugly, but they win that game. And man, he was gangbusters for about a month and a half. He proved that he warrants the opportunity to start, to get one of those middle tier contracts that we've seen, right? I think Baker Mayfield is in that bucket. Daniel Jones got a lot of money. Maybe it's that kind of contract that a team can talk themselves into when it comes to Sam Darnold, even though it ended so poorly. The Raiders come to mind. I would just be kind of shooting from the hip. I don't know. The Giants would be intriguing. I would really love to see Sam Darnold get with another really bright offensive mind, because Kevin O'Connell is one of the best, if not the best, at schematically just layering an offense. There were options all over the field, and Sam Darnold ran that thing beautifully. Yes, he had Justin Jefferson. Yes, he had Jordan Addison. But let's give Darnold some credit, too. He played really good football last year. I think that sour taste in our mouth is warranted, but people will remember what they saw most of the season. Selfishly, I would love to see a coach like Brian Dable work with Darnold and see what they could do together. I don't know if that's the fit, but I think if he's with a really good offensive mind, maybe it's not what we saw in 2024, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if he warrants whatever that deal is, $40 million a year.
Ty Dunne here with us. The first 2 picks of the draft, and I'm sure we'll get more clarity next week, or you'll have different takes because everyone gets in the same room, people start to talk and loose lips and all that stuff. I do think one of Tennessee or Cleveland will end up taking a quarterback, and I think Cam Ward will be the first quarterback taken. Who do you lean right now? Is it Cleveland or Tennessee taking that quarterback, in your opinion?
I thought you were going to bring up Abdul Carter, and I was going to have to storm off the set, a la Warren Sapp. That, by the way, to kind
Bizarre.
of like Radio Row all week, there's so many interviews and there's so many headlines. The fact that you and Warren Sapp had that moment and it just freight train plowed through all of the headlines says a lot about you, man. That was a great interview, great back and forth.
Well, I've had a lot of arguments on the air, and that was the dumbest one. Because it wasn't contentious. You would think the first 10 minutes we loved each other. We were having like a fun conversation, going back and forth, smiling, laughing. And then I'm just like, all right, where's Abdul Carter? You just said the 3 players. And he's like, he's like, when's the last time Penn State produced a good pass rusher? I'm like, I don't know. Some guy by the name of Micah Parsons. It's like, there's beef between Sapp and Parsons. That's what I learned after that conversation.
Exactly. There's something else there. And I promise I'm not filibustering because I do love Cam Ward. I'm no draft expert, but I just from what I've seen and the people I've talked to, he's got a game that's got some pop to it. Like he's got a big arm. He's got some mobility. You can, I feel like you can talk yourself.
He reminds me of a poor man's Ben Roethlisberger. That's what I keep on going back to with Cam Ward.
I like it. That's a great comp. And hey, my Syracuse Orange, they took it to him. So, credit where credit's due to the Orange in Central New York. But I feel like both of those teams need a quarterback. It's just, when do you pull the trigger? And my mind immediately goes back to here in Buffalo, having the chance to draft Patrick Mahomes. The owner loves Patrick Mahomes, but they don't want to rush into it with a new coach. The new coach wants to try to win now, build a culture, push it down there. I'm not saying Cam Ward's got to be Patrick Mahomes, but I feel like the Titans kind of changing things at the top, or Brian Callahan in his second year, new GM, a lot of change there. They might be thinking, let's just see what the quarterbacks look like next. There's no guarantee that you're going to be in position to draft the top quarterback next year. And it could be some paralysis by analysis, and they'll be thinking about all those guys at the top of the draft. When it comes down to it, you've got a shot to take a quarterback, and usually those teams take the quarterback. I don't know why they wouldn't, right? Unless you just absolutely love Carter or love Travis Hunter. I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's that one sure thing in this draft. So that tends to make you think they'd go quarterback there in Tennessee.
So you think they're going to take Cam Ward 1? How about 2 and 3 then with the Browns and the Giants? How do you think the next 2 picks shape on out?
Oh, man. Now you got me mock drafting. I always promise readers, if I ever do a mock draft, just, shoot me to the cornfield, cancel me forever. I can't stand them, but we're only doing a couple picks.
Yeah.
So we'll let it slide.
Well, don't worry. My next question are all the rest of the first round. Don't worry. I'm going to make you do 32 picks here.
On X, I love saying, here's mock 13.0, and then I just link to, a Jim Croce video from 1973. Just Rick rolling with operator. You know what? The Browns, what are the Browns going to do at quarterback? I don't think that they or the Giants can just wait and hold their breath and hope they get their quarterback in the draft. They're going to do something. Something's going to go down in Indianapolis. They're going to have conversations around the league and, cover their bases. Maybe they do what Atlanta did last year. Maybe not to that extreme, but you sign a quarterback and you draft. I think that they'd like to double up. Maybe they can package Deshaun Watson somehow into a Myles Garrett trade. And it doesn't sound like they want to trade Myles Garrett, but anything can happen there in Indianapolis. That seems high for Shedeur Sanders, right? Like, you don't want to just take a quarterback because you can take a quarterback. Maybe the Browns they just need talent everywhere. Maybe they just take whoever's the best on their board. Maybe it's Carter. Maybe it's Travis Hunter. I don't know. I think the Giants have to do something before the draft, right? Like, you're really hoping and praying if you don't do something in free agency for the Giants.
It's going to be interesting because last year they were hoping to get a quarterback, and they didn't like the guys that were available. They got shut out, and they just had to run it back with Daniel Jones. So you're probably right. They may have to double dip where you get a solid veteran, and then, hey, if your guy's still there at 3, you also take him as well, and then you try to figure it out. You mentioned Myles Garrett, Ty Dunne. Go along TD.com. Make sure you check it out. So I think he'll get traded by the conclusion of the first round. I know that the Browns don't want to trade him right now, but that's ultimately going to change. They really have no leverage here. I keep on going to 5 teams: Commanders, Bills, Lions, Eagles, Chiefs, and I think you get a good bidding war there. Who's the one team that stands out really over the rest that you feel, I don't want to say confident, but you look at them and you end up saying, okay, I could see Myles Garrett being on that team next year?
I think you just nailed the timing of it too, because it doesn't really benefit Cleveland in any form or fashion, privately, publicly, with anybody in the media, to telegraph that, yeah, we will deal Myles Garrett. But at the end of the day, you're not competing for anything anytime soon. You're wandering aimlessly at quarterback. It makes sense to trade him, to reset, to restart, to get what you can. And you're right, there is a market for him. There's going to be a good 3, 4, 5 teams that will be willing to trade a ton of draft capital for Myles Garrett. Look, I don't think this is a Von Miller situation. Like, we saw that in Buffalo. They gave a lot of money to Von Miller. And maybe he would have been everything they needed if he didn't tear his ACL that first year. He was playing really well. He had like 7 or 8 sacks, and then he tore that knee up. He's not that old, right? He's not at that point of his career. I think he's still in his prime. He just won Defensive Player of the Year in 2023. So what does that mean? 2 first-round picks? Would a team really go 3 first-round picks? You might see a Les Snead, F them picks kind of move from a GM. And why not? If you're Washington and you've got Jane Daniels, right, and you've got that window of opportunity with his contract to go for it, you should, right? You should. That defense, they need a lot of pieces, but Myles Garrett is about 2 or 3 of those pieces in one. We just saw it in the Super Bowl. You get a pass rush when you don't have to blitz. It makes everybody else look better, right? That's going to be the big swing. Teams are going to try to just do what Vic Fangio did, not blitz at all if they don't have to, and have 4 guys that annihilate the offensive lineman across the line of scrimmage. Old school football. That game brought us all back to what football really is. Myles Garrett makes that happen for you if you're the Commanders. He is going to help everybody. So, yeah, I think if you're Washington, you're absolutely putting in the best possible offer you can. I think Buffalo would love to, but I don't know if Buffalo's in position to make the kind of offer that Washington can.
So why not? So I'm just looking at this. I have confidence Howie will do whatever it takes. I think Veach is obviously going to be in every conversation. I think Adam Peters is going to be the most aggressive team here with the Commanders. The Bills and the Lions, to me, though, are the most intriguing because they're so close, and this could be the player that puts them over the top. So why do you feel like the Bills may not be in position to do so?
Well, they definitely have a little more flexibility this spring versus last spring. They ate Stephon Diggs' money last year. They're not out of the woods. I'm not sure exactly how much cap room they have, but it's not a lot. And they've got Terrell Bernard up for an extension, James Cook up for an extension, Khalil Shakir, if you want to pay him. So all GMs like to pay their homegrown guys if they can. And hey, I'm with you. I think they should just try to win now. You got this window with Josh Allen. He's the reigning MVP. Why wouldn't you try to add that kind of threat on the other side of the ball? I don't know. I tend to think Brandon Beane's a pretty honest guy. Like, in a profession full of BSers, he usually shoots straight at the podium. And after the season, in so many words, again and again, he repeated, you can't think that you're one player away. That's a dangerous mindset. You can't be obsessed with one team like the Chiefs. That's a dangerous mindset. I think they are going to try to treat that roster, like he says, a chemistry experiment and tinker where they can. They don't want to get in a position where you gut your draft capital and you hurt your salary cap, and 2-3 years down the line, you're completely starting over for a year, and then you ruin a year of Josh Allen's prime. I think he's scared of that. Now, what the Bills should do, Zach, is actually take a chance on some red flag, quote unquote, character risk players. It's a really close team. The bonds are tight, but at the end of that first round, early second round, it'd be nice to see them take a chance on somebody who trickles into that range that maybe teams are passing on. They never do that. It might be time to go that route and find that player.
Yeah, and just don't trade with the Chiefs this year. Don't do that in the draft because they should be done traded with the Chiefs in the draft. He is Ty Dunne from GoLongTD.com. Ty, always great to have you on. Appreciate it.
Anytime, Zach. Thanks so much, man.
There you go. Make sure you check that out once again, GoLongTD.com, and subscribe to get all of the latest insight from Ty Dunne as he does a great job covering the NFL. Well, come on back. I'm going to pivot here, and we're going to continue to piggyback off of the Myles Garrett conversation. I gave you the 5 destinations. I'll rank you those 5 destinations from least likely to most likely to go land Myles Garrett when we come on back.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. 1 minute remaining. "45 seconds remaining. "30 seconds remaining. "15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
All right, we just had Ty Dunne on, and he kind of poured some cold water on the possibility of Myles Garrett going to the Buffalo Bills. He just doesn't think that Brandon Beane's going to pull the trigger on this one, even though Ty thinks he should, and I think he should as well. So I'm just out of curiosity, out of the teams that are in the NFL, right, 31 other teams that are looking to trade for Myles Garrett, if we do power rankings in terms of who's going to be the most aggressive and who's also realistic, and if you had to rank those 5 teams right now and where you think that he's going to end up getting traded to, I put together my 5. I'll look up the odds here in just a second, but Stu, I'm curious who your 5 are as well, and then we'll compare notes here.
Okay, so first I have the Commanders, second Lions, third Eagles, fourth Bills, 5 Chiefs.
Okay, we have the same 5 teams, but in a different order. Now, the latest odds on DraftKings on where Myles Garrett's going to be playing next year. 1, Commanders at plus 300. 2, Eagles at plus 450. Back in Cleveland at plus 500, which I didn't even think about that, but I think he's getting dealt by the end of the first round. Buffalo 4th at plus 550, and the Lions 5th at plus 650. Do you want to take a guess here, Stu? The next 3 highest odds to go get Myles Garrett, according to DraftKings.
I'll say the Cowboys are up there.
You know what? The Cowboys
Wow.
are not. They're at plus 1,800. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Has them tied for 11th because you have the Patriots, Rams, Chargers, and Cowboys at plus 1,800. There's one team that we both named that was not named in the top 5. That's Kansas City.
The Chiefs, yeah.
Yeah, at plus 1,400. But there's 2 teams in front of them. 2 teams in front of them. Both in the same division, too.
Packers and Vikings?
Close. Packers and Bears. Yeah. Packers at plus 1,200. Bears at plus 900.
Bears are interesting.
The Bears are intriguing, too. Now, we don't know if Caleb Williams is the guy. Like, you look at the Commanders, Jaden Daniels proved in 1 year that he could be the guy. Caleb Williams, you could blame it on coach, you could blame it on himself. Wherever you put the blame on, the jury is now out on Caleb Williams. We got to see what's going to happen. But you pair him with Ben Johnson, and you would expect that he has to be better than what he was last year, and the team has to be better. But I've seen crazier things. You don't want to set a city and send a city into a frenzy. You go put Myles Garrett and have him trade to the Bears. There's a lot of pressure there for multiple reasons. 1, you get Myles Garrett. Okay, you have your cornerstone player on defense, and you have what you think is your cornerstone player on offense in Caleb Williams. But 2, if I'm a team like the Browns, I'm good with trading him to a team like the Bears. Now, I don't know if Myles Garrett will be on board because the Bears, to me, are nowhere close to winning a Super Bowl. But Stu, if I'm a team like the Browns and I have to trade Myles Garrett, if you're getting back 2 first-round picks for Myles Garrett, you know, the odds of those picks being good in the first round, if he gets traded to a team like the Lions or the Chiefs or the Bills, are not good. You're going to be picking late 20s, in the 30s, right? Early 30s, right? 30, 31, 32, somewhere in that range, like anywhere from 26 to 32. You go to the Bears and the Bears do what they've done for, I don't know, the last 2 decades. I know they've been in a few NFC championship games. They've been to a Super Bowl, all that stuff. But for the most part, the Bears are picking pretty early in the draft. And even if they get Myles Garrett, and let's just say the Bears still be the Bears, and they always be the Bears, you could end up getting better draft capital than probably anywhere else that you're going to get him to, or Myles Garrett may. And I don't know if he would, but he may sign off on the Bears. Maybe he wants to take a chance on a team that's young, up and coming.
Yeah, and you look at like the Browns, like you had Myles Garrett, and okay, maybe like 2 years ago, they trade for Deshaun Watson, and you're like, okay, they have something here.
Face, yeah.
You never know. Caleb Williams might not be the guy, and just because you have Myles Garrett doesn't make you a contender, clearly. So that could be trouble.
And also, we talk about this all the time, right? You don't need a PhD in football to figure this one out. The game is won in the trenches. The Browns have had Joe Thomas on the offensive line, right? Already in the Hall of Fame. And you've had Myles Garrett. And at least with Myles Garrett, they got their act together for a little bit, right? They had that 1 year where they made the playoffs. They made the playoffs twice with him. They lost that 1 year in the wild card round to the Texans. And the other year, they beat the Steelers before they lost to Kansas City, where you had Henny. Was it for the Chiefs that ended up coming in? No, it wasn't Chad. Who was the backup quarterback for the Chiefs that came in?
Was it Matt Moore?
No, it wasn't Matt Moore. He came in and he threw that out route, 5 yards to Tyreek Hill. What the heck is that? Was it Chase Dan? No, I forget who it was. But Mahomes got hurt. They're playing the Browns in the divisional round, and he threw that 5-yard out route on the Eric Bieniemy play call along with Andy Reid, and you found Tyreek Hill to go win that game. I believe it was on 4th down. So let me know if you end up finding the name, because that's the one to me. Oh, I forget who the backup quarterback was. White dude, too. I want to say it was Henny.
Yeah, so back in 2019, Matt Moore was the backup. 2020 was Chad Henne, and 2023 was Blaine Gabbert.
Oh, so maybe it was Chad Henne then.
Yeah, it's probably one of those guys.
No, it was then Chad Henne.
There you go.
So I was right. I don't know why. For some reason, I said Chad Henne, and then I'm like, it's not. Yeah, he threw that out route, which is crazy. And then Mahomes ended up coming back, and they beat the did they beat the Bengals? They lost to the Bengals. I think they lost to the Bengals. Yeah, they ended up no, they beat the Bengals. Then they beat the Bengals in that AFC Championship game, because that was January of 2023, where Henne replaced an injured Mahomes. And, oh no, that was the divisional round. He came in twice, remember? Henne had to come in twice because Mahomes got hurt. I think the first time, the one that I'm talking about originally, was 2022. And then the second time was 2023. So there's your Chad Henne conversation on the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. But anyway, when you get to the Browns, going back to them, Myles Garrett and Joe Thomas have dominated the trenches, and what has it really led to? It's kind of wild. All right, here are my rankings. These are the latest Zach Gelb Show top 5 destinations for Myles Garrett that I think are going to be the most aggressive in their pursuit and also have a chance of happening. In at number 5, I think it's the Buffalo Bills. I feel like the last few years we talked about the Bills being in on some big names, whether it was Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey. We've talked about them adding big names. Now, they did add Von Miller, but that was Von Miller up there in age, and then Von Miller suffered a big injury for the Buffalo Bills, and he's never had the same explosiveness. So I don't know if it's just not in Brandon Beane's DNA. I think he should be all in and being willing to risk that capital to go try to win the Bills their first ever Super Bowl, and I do think Myles Garrett could be the missing piece, but I don't know if Brandon Beane's going to match that energy. So I put Brandon Beane of the Bills in at 5. 4, I think Veach, right, is in on every deal. He leaves no stone unturned. I think they'll place a call. I think they'll make an offer, but I don't think it's going to be rich enough for the Browns to trade Myles Garrett to the Chiefs, but I do put the Chiefs in there at 4. 3, I actually have the Detroit Lions. I could see Brad Holmes, right, comes from the Rams trade, just saying bleep those picks and trades the picks and say, hey, this is my core. This is my group. We've drafted so well. We have a good team in place. We're right there. 2 years ago, NFC Championship game, we blew the lead. This past year, we were the best team in football, you could argue, in the regular season. And then come postseason time, we just laid an egg. We need one more piece. We're getting Hutch back. You have Hutch on one side, Myles Garrett on the other. That's more than enough on defense with the way that our offense, even without Ben Johnson, sells a high-octane offense ability with Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, and you just go all in and you say bleep those picks, and I could see Brad Holmes doing it. But 2-1, the Eagles, right, they're in the penthouse. The Eagles, Howie Roseman, has been a wizard when it comes to trades, and you've seen the long list of guys that he's traded for, whether it's in the draft, the wheeling and dealing he did for Cooper DeJean, right? Somehow Jalen Carter landed to him. You saw the deal that they got in free agency with Saquon Barkley. You look at the A.J. Brown trade, a first-round pick for A.J. Brown. You do that 10 times out of 10. Howie Roseman has been a wizard when it comes to trades, and now he's playing right in a luxury palace where even if he doesn't get this deal done, he will still be viewed as the best team in football entering next season. I could see Howie really saying, okay, I'm already cemented in NFL history, but I could go down as one of the greatest executives of all time. But right now I'm viewed as a legend, but I could go down as one of the greatest executives of all time if I go win a third championship, or maybe even more than that if you end up getting Myles Garrett. And at number one, I think it's the Commanders. I think the Commanders will show the most desperation. You have a rookie quarterback, right? Just finished his rookie season on a rookie deal. So you have that low salary for 4 or 5 years if you want it, depending on when you're going to extend him. You have Terry McLaurin all locked up, good to go. Maybe add another offensive weapon right there on that offensive side of the ball. But defense, that's where you need help. You need help on the defense. You're fine last year, right? Got to an NFC championship game, but you don't want to regress this year. You go get Myles Garrett. On offense for the foreseeable future, Jaden Daniels is your guy. And then for the next 3 to 5 years, Myles Garrett is your guy on defense. And you would look at one of the craziest rebuilds that we've ever seen where the Commanders were laughed at for the last 20 years. And then you get Daniel Snyder out, right? You have the first year together of Adam Peters. I know a second year for Josh Harris, but Adam Peters and Dan Quinn with Jaden Daniels. And boom, they got to an NFC championship game. You go get Myles Garrett. You could not only get back to that NFC championship game. It's not crazy to say that maybe you're in the Super Bowl next year and you end up winning it. So I would say right now, the top 5 destinations I think most realistic and who's going to be the most aggressive in their pursuit of Myles Garrett. 1, 2, Eagles, 3, Lions, 4, Chiefs, 5, the Buffalo Bills. Zach Gelb Show, Infinity Sports Network. Dr. Brandon J. Erickson's going to join us on the other side to try to make some sense of what's going on, unfortunately, with the form of a blood clot that was found in Victor Wembanyama's right shoulder. We'll talk more Wemby when we come on back. Update time first. Here's Zach.
Infinity Sports Network. Sports Flash.
And Rookie of the Year, Victor Wembanyama's sophomore season ends with an injury. The 7-foot sensation is done due to a blood clot in his shoulder. He had an all-star season, averaging over 24 points and 11 rebounds a game, and also led the league in blocked shots. The Bucks' Bobby Portis will miss most of the remainder of the regular season. The veteran forward has been suspended 25 games for violating the NBA's drug program. The 30-year-old thought he was taking Toradol, a pain medication that is legal, but instead took Tramadol, which is a banned substance by the league. After just one game last night, there are 9 on the schedule tonight, including the Eastern Conference best Cavaliers, who go for their 45th win in Brooklyn. The Yankees will open their spring schedule tomorrow. Aaron Boone can open the season with a new deal as the Yankees and their manager agreed to a 2-year extension. Boone has a .599 winning percentage in his 7 seasons on the job. The NHL's Four Nations tournament ends tonight with U.S. and Canada going head-to-head in the finals, a rematch of Saturday's high-intensity matchup won by the United States 3-1. Both Matthew and Brady Tkachuk, who had fights in the first 3 seconds on Saturday, are both expected to play after sitting out due to injuries on Monday. I'm Rich Ackerman.
The Infinity Sports Network is on your smart speaker. All you have to say is, play Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Welcome back to the Zach Gelb Show.
Alrighty, this portion of the show is sponsored by Hyundai. Hyundai helps protect you and your family on the road. We put your safety first and everything else second. Let's go out to the guest line right now. We need to react and get a little bit of a medical opinion here to the Victor Wembanyama story. As according to Shams Charania, he has a form of a blood clot in his right shoulder. He's going to be out for the season. And the Spurs believe this is an isolated condition. So we bring in Dr. Brandon J. Erickson, who's kind enough to join us right now. Doc, I know it's been a while. Appreciate the time. How you been?
Dak, good, man. Just down here in Clearwater at spring training now. So interesting to see this today.
So when you see this from Victor Wembanyama's perspective and also medical perspective, for people that aren't really familiar, right, with all these medical terms and everything, just what do you think this kind of means for Victor Wembanyama when you look at it from afar?
Yeah, so take a step back and kind of run through what it is. So they said it's a blood clot in his shoulder. So blood clots can happen in veins, they can happen in arteries. His sounds like one that happened in one of his veins, kind of the vessels that bring the blood out of your arm back to your heart. Clots can form for different reasons. Sometimes somebody has a trauma, clot can form. Sometimes you can have an underlying condition in your blood that causes it to be more likely to clot. We've seen that, right? Chris Bosh, Serena Williams, they can sometimes have some clotting disorders. But the bottom line is he has a clot that's obstructing the blood from coming back. They have to try to get that clot to break up. And so what they do is they give him some medicine that basically helps to break that clot up and to prevent new clots from forming. Because if that clot were to break off and go back, it could head back to his lungs and cause a problem.
So, like you just explained it, right? They're hopeful that this is an isolated condition and they'll give him the medicine and we'll see what happens. How early can you tell if this is going to be something that's going to be lingering or if it will just be one incident here?
Yeah, so he's going to have a whole bunch of blood tests now. He's going to get tested for all kinds of kind of clotting factors and issues that can cause his blood to clot. And as long as he clears all of those and they come back negative, then you call this a clot that probably happened from some, repetitive trauma, him twisting his head or getting hit in the shoulder. And so they'll keep him on blood thinners for probably 3 to 6 months. They'll rescan him. If everything looks good, they'll take him off the blood thinners, but it's going to be something that he'll have to monitor going forward.
Yeah, I remember, I forget exactly when he got diagnosed, but Christian Barmore of the Patriots, right, had blood clots. We thought he was going to miss the entirety of the season. He eventually came back towards the end of the year. When do you kind of get the green light? What do you need to see until maybe, I'm not saying Victor Wembanyama comes back and play. They already say he's out for the year, but he could resume like basketball activities.
Yeah, so you want to see that, one, you do a scan, make sure the clot's gone, the blood's getting back to his heart okay, so that's step one. And then step two, you want to make sure that no new clots are forming anywhere else. They'll probably do a battery of tests on him to make sure he's not forming clots in his legs. Because to be honest with you, Zach, the shoulder's not a common place to have a clot form. Usually they form in your legs and then they break off and they go back to the heart there. Having them happen in the shoulder is actually not very common. So he's going to have this looked into a little bit more than most.
So I want to ask you this. I know we were exchanging a few messages about it. I remember reading this article on February 1st that Victor Wembanyama was out with an illness and he said it was mainly just allergies. They came back a little bit earlier, a week ago from the date of that article, from a trip in France where they were playing. And since then, like even before we found out the news today, he was questionable for the game because of an illness. This mysterious illness and allergies that happened from a trip back in January when they came on back and he started experiencing. Could this be connected where, maybe this is how it starts? You just feel under the weather and then eventually you get testing done that determines, hey, you actually have a form of a blood clot in your right shoulder.
Yeah, it definitely could have been. And it's a hard thing to diagnose, I'll be honest with you, because it's not something that pops into the front of your head of thinking, a healthy, active NBA player has a blood clot in an area where you don't usually get them. So, all the credit to the doctors there that diagnosed this. But you're right. It could have been an issue where you had this clot forming. Blood wasn't getting back to his heart the way it normally does, so it's pooling in his arm a little bit. Lactic acid builds up, causes him to feel fatigued a little bit, has these, allergic symptoms or just feels a little bit run down because something in his body was going on. Thankfully they found this before it led to a bigger problem.
How do you find it? Just wondering. Because if someone says, hey, I have this illness, I have these allergies, I don't think right away you're testing for blood clots, but how do you eventually find it and determine it?
Yeah, it's a hard thing to do. So in the legs and the shoulder, we use an ultrasound. And what they do with the ultrasound is they kind of push on your blood vessels and they make sure that they compress. And they can also check the flow that goes back and forth in the blood vessels to make sure it's flowing at a normal rate and it doesn't have any big blockages that are there. So they probably started with that. If there's an issue where that doesn't pick it up, they can inject some dye and do a CAT scan and basically watch the dye go through all your blood vessels and see if there's a blockage anywhere.
So I'll also ask you this because you also said Dr. Brandon J. Erickson is here with us on the Zach Gelb Show talking about the Victor Wembanyama situation. You said the shoulder is more rare and it's usually in the legs. Does that mean it's more dangerous if it's in the shoulder? Just wondering.
No, it's a good question. It's not because they go back to kind of the same spot. So it's not that it's more dangerous. It's just that it's honestly much harder to diagnose. So it was a good pickup.
So how do you kind of determine, I know we talked about the next step forward, But I'm just curious here. The Spurs through Shams say that this is an isolated incident. Do they really know? Like, you don't really know yet, right?
Correct. So they probably have scanned his legs, because that would be the first thing that you would do if you picked up a clot in the shoulder, is you scan his legs and you make sure there's nothing there. So they probably don't have any clots in his legs, if that's what they said, but they probably haven't gotten the testing back on whether or not he has some clotting disorder in his blood. So you'd be hard pressed to come out really quick and say that.
Gotcha. Before we let you run, I know you're in Clearwater as you're part of the Phillies medical staff. Is a team physician, right? I think is the proper title. Yeah, I went to Temple. I'm not a doctor here. So how about the essentials of spring training? Because we see more injuries really in baseball with how much they make the pitchers throw and the speeds now. This build up period in spring training, I kind of can't stand it because of just the fact of I always just fear people are going to get hurt this time of the year, and I just want to get to the regular season. But how essential is really spring training for baseball players?
So you're right in the sense that people get hurt in that initial time that they come back. But if you got rid of spring training, you'd probably just see it happen in the regular season rather than spring training. The spring training buildup is pretty important. So whether you're a pitcher or position player, you got to build up your soft tissue pliability and your hamstrings, your quads, so you don't wind up pulling up lame. But from a pitcher perspective, that UCL, that ligament on the inside of the elbow that pitchers tend to get hurt, that Tommy John ligament, if you just go back and start to throw it 100% without having kind of ramped yourself up and warm that ligament up to stretch it out, the risk of you tearing that ligament is very high. We ramp these guys up. We have them throw 60 feet, 120 feet. They throw some bullpens at low effort. Then they throw higher level bullpens. Then they throw live BP. Then they start to throw in games. And the hope with that is that we get that ligament to start to be stretchy, their shoulder ligaments to get to be stretchy, so we don't increase the risk for injury. So you're right. It's annoying and it takes some time and it's kind of painful. But without it, the risk of injury for those first couple of weeks of the season would go way up.
Last thing I'll ask you, I'll just bring this up because I know you played for Notre Dame. You had to be very happy with their football season, right?
I was pretty happy with it. I obviously the last game was pretty disappointing, especially after the way we started, and then couldn't seem to stop them for a while. But give them all the credit in the world for fighting to the end. And I think the future's bright. I'm excited to see who wins out on this quarterback battle. I'm excited that we don't have a transfer coming in. And we have some guys that have been there for a little bit because, the transfer stuff. I mean, I don't know what your opinion on it, Zach. I'm curious what it is. I don't love the transfer portal stuff in college right now without having to sit out. And so I think it's kind of changing the game a little bit. And I'm excited that we have somebody that's been there for a couple of years and then is going to come through the system and get to play.
Yeah, it's worked both ways, right? You could win with talent that you've had, and then we've seen, right? Look, this past year, Will Howard, transfer quarterback, Riley Leonard, transfer quarterback, and both of them were in the national championship game. But it's one of those situations where it's made it a 365-day out of the year sport because we cover it now as if it's professional football.
Yeah, and you have to because it's just kind of crazy how fast things change and how much money is flying around. So, we'll see how it goes over the next few years.
Well, Doc, we appreciate it. Dr. Brandon J. Erickson, appreciate you giving us some insight and trying to clear some things up that I just have no clue how to explain to our listening audience.
No, thanks for having me, Zach.
You got it. There he is, Dr. Brandon J. Erickson on the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. So what I take from that is, right, with blood clots, it's usually in your legs. This one is in his shoulder. And from here on out, you just hope that it isn't something reoccurring. It's one of those things where now they're going to give him the medicine, like he said, and you hope that this is it. So that report from Shams Charania, once again, was Victor Wembanyama has a form of a blood clot in his right shoulder. He's out for the season. The Spurs believe this is an isolated condition. So that's their hopeful, wishful thinking, that this is a one-time thing and then it's going to go away. But I think the timeline of this, and, Doc said good on the doctors for eventually finding it out because, right, you have a guy saying, all right, I'm coming back from France after what they played 2 games there. And it's, I don't feel well. It's just allergies coming back to the U.S. I'm under the weather. And I remember reading that story, and that was in that was February 1st from NBA.com. And I know that trip was towards the end of January. And I'm like, okay, I didn't think much of it, right? If the guy's saying he has allergies, if the guy's saying he has an illness, who am I to question that? And then the other day, when you see that he may not play up against the Suns because of this illness, I'm like, how long is he being sick for? If we go back to February 1st and illness, allergies, you get allergies for a week. Like, I think we all get them, right? Now, when there's pollen out there, yeah, I get it. But for that to be a month-long thing, and then it comes out today, oh, he has a blood clot in his right shoulder, I got to think, and right, Doc didn't rule it out, that it could be connected, that was the initial discomfort, and he just thought, oh, it's a headache, or oh, it's allergies, oh, it's just body aches, oh, it's an illness. And then it's like, no, the doctors were able to detect that it ended up being a blood clot or a form of a blood clot in his right shoulder. And I reached out to Doc. That's why we brought him on today because, I could speculate on sports. When it comes to speculating on medical things, that's above my pay grade. And I will quickly sound like a jackass if you give me the ability to speculate on medical things. And I just said to him, hey, Doc, question. So Wemby's been dealing with this mysterious illness and been saying it's allergies for a bit. Could this be related? And they just figured out what it was. And he right away, as you heard him on the air say a few moments ago, absolutely could have been when you have an upper extremity blood clot, it often restricts the return of blood, which can pool and cause some of those symptoms. So it kind of makes sense. And I guess good on the medical staff that they were able to identify it. But the whole thing just sucks if you look at it, right? Guy was awesome, met the hype in year one, became an all-star, right, in year two, is on the verge of becoming the face of the league. And now, you hope it's just an isolated incident, but it turns into one of those things where no one really knows what's going on. Now, we've seen players before have blood clots and be able to return. But you hope, obviously, not just for him getting back on a basketball court, I don't want to be selfish, but for his life, that this is just one thing, right? Freak thing, it happened, and then you move on. But I hate to be the doom and gloom kind of guy, but I can't sit here and tell you that's definitive. And now, when you look back, right, I think you read the Shams thing at first. It's like the Spurs believe this is an isolated condition. Like, I read that at first. I'm like, oh, it's an isolated condition. You just get the message, you follow it. The Spurs believe. I could believe this piece of paper is purple. It's white. So...
Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Alrighty, hour number 3 of our radio program. That's right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. So we're waiting to see what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers. The Jets announced that he's not coming back. He's not going to be their quarterback next year. And I really do believe with the Combine getting underway next week, towards the end of next week, you'll start to hear some chatter. You know, I'm kind of surprised we've not heard Rodgers yet on McAfee. I think we would have heard from Rodgers on McAfee in terms of doing the whole speculation, or at least finding out that he was going into some cave to determine his future, and you would emerge out of the darkness retreat and see where the light is at the end of the tunnel on your football future. Because Rodgers, who I don't believe for a second, by the way, he was the same guy a few years ago when it was coming to an end in Green Bay that he said he went into the cave, and when he went into the cave, he was at about 90% thinking that he was going to retire, and then he emerged, and right, it was the Jets are the team that you need to go to, and that's what happened when you did this darkness retreat. So Rodgers going to let this play out. It's going to be a dog and pony show. It's going to be a ton of drama because that's what Aaron Rodgers loves, but I'm just fascinated by where he's going to play football next year. And I look at it right now, if I'm Aaron Rodgers, and this is what Aaron Rodgers wants to do, I don't know if these teams would be interested. But if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I would love to go to the Steelers. If I'm Aaron Rodgers, I would love to go to the Rams. But you look at the Steelers, they're at least realistic, I think. The Rams, they got to move on from Stafford first. And then if that door is open, then you could swoop in and go there. But outside of that, like where Aaron Rodgers goes, it would be kind of sad, no offense, Stu, if he ends his career with the Raiders. Now, I don't want to see Aaron Rodgers end his career with the Las Vegas Raiders. You're not playing for anything. You know, for the Rams, you're playing for a championship. For the Steelers, you know you'll at least be in the playoff mix. The Raiders, you're going to be looking up at the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Broncos. Now, the quarterbacks in that division would be awesome. You get Mahomes, Herbert, Knicks, and Rodgers. That would be a whole lot of fun in those divisional round games. But the Raiders were a 4-win team last year. So let's say even if you think you could put Aaron Rodgers on a team, and I don't know if his value is that great anymore. Like, he's still a very good quarterback. But let's say if Rodgers is a 3-win difference, maybe at most, and that may be too rich. You're going from the Raiders being a 4-win team last year to a 7-win team. So that's not where I want to see Aaron Rodgers ends his career. Imagine if it's Cleveland. No offense to Cleveland, it'd be the same thing. They were a 3-win football team last year. And I don't think bringing in Aaron Rodgers when he's 40 at this stage of his career is going to make Myles Garrett say, yeah, I want to stay. Same thing with Tennessee. They're a 3-win football team. I don't want to see that. I don't think the Colts are going to bring Rodgers in because the Colts have kind of done this old quarterback thing, right? We saw it with Phillip Rivers. We saw it with Matt Ryan. Now they have Anthony Richardson. I don't believe in Anthony Richardson, but I think they'll bring another veteran voice in there. Like, I could see Russell Wilson coming on in there. But if you bring in Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers is going to be your week 1 starter. Aaron Rodgers not doing a quarterback competition here. Russell Wilson, the luster is kind of worn off. And Russell Wilson this past year was just in that QB situation with Justin Fields. So you look around the rest of the league, like, is Rodgers staying in New York and going to the Giants? Same thing. Giants a 3-win team last year. So you bring him in what? You get 6 wins, 7 wins? The Niners, people will bring up the Niners, right? You go back to the Rodgers story, getting passed up 1 overall. Alex Smith going to the 49ers all those years ago. He then falls to the Green Bay Packers, eventually goes towards the later part of the first round to the Packers. But you look at San Francisco, I understand why people will throw that out there. You got a young Brock Purdy. Even if you don't think Brock Purdy is great, I still look at Brock Purdy as, even if you don't think he's great, and I don't think he's great, I think he's good, I think he's solid. I still think there's a lot more football that he has to prove to us and play. But the Niners are going to load him up and give him a big fat contract this offseason. That's just what's going to happen. I don't think the Niners are going to move on from Brock Purdy. So it's like, other than that, where else is he going? Is he going to the Saints? Saints are a 5-win football team. So what if the Bucks and the Falcons don't end up doing what they're capable of next year? Maybe you have an outside chance to go on a run and just get into the postseason and win the NFC South. So the destinations kind of stink for Rodgers. And the only two that make me go, ooh, like at least intrigued, at least interested, would be the Pittsburgh Steelers and then also the LA Rams. But I talked to Herm Edwards over the weekend when I was filling on the Fan in New York. And I threw 2 teams out there to him. At the time, the Stafford stuff, I didn't put 2 and 2 together yet of the Rams and potentially Aaron Rodgers because I still am under the belief that Stafford's going to be back. But the 2 teams I threw out there were the Raiders, which would be unfortunate, and then also the Pittsburgh Steelers. When I asked Herm specifically about the Steelers, this is what he said about why he's a little skeptical of potentially Rodgers going to Pittsburgh this year.
Obviously, if he goes to Pittsburgh now, that organization is buttoned up tight. It starts with Mike, obviously the head coach, but also it starts with the Rooney family. So there's a whole different. That's a whole different culture there now, and you got to buy into the culture. And if you can't do that, you're not going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler.
So I think that's the nicest way without Herm saying it, without him saying that the Steelers won't do this. When he just says, "Hey, when I bring up Rodgers to the Steelers, you got to buy into the culture of not only Mike Tomlin, but also the Rooney family and what they've built in Pittsburgh." I don't know how much I believe that though. Because I do get that from a lot of people, and I've thrown around Rodgers to the Steelers for the last few years. When he was leaving the Packers, I threw out the Steelers and said, why not? Have that be the Big Ben replacement. And a lot of people have said, what about Tomlin? What about the Rooney family? I don't see them really coexisting and doing things in Aaron Rodgers' terms. And I'm not saying that Rodgers is going to give a little bit more because I fully expect Aaron Rodgers goes somewhere. You saw it at the end in Green Bay. He basically wanted to be the GM. And then when they pressed him, this is one of my favorite press conferences ever, if I'm being honest. They pressed Rodgers on some of the players that he was upset with, right? When he did that emotional press conference, and a lot of people were like, yeah, rah, rah. Like, the Packers need to treat their players better. They need to treat the older guard better. And the guys that he listed and the guys that he was talking about, sure, it made you feel sentimental. Sure, there was a connection. Sure, those guys were great in Green Bay. But was Green Bay really ever wrong for moving on from those players? Like, you go through those players he was talking about, thought should have been treated better at the end in Green Bay. A lot of them did nothing. Did nothing once they left the Green Bay Packers. And that's why I want to give input to Aaron Rodgers and to quarterbacks. But you still need a GM and a head coach, and they're not going to let the quarterback be the main point guy of the team. Because quarterbacks, you don't know what they're motivated by. And yes, they need to have a say because of how much we pay them. But in terms of building a 53, I don't know if quarterbacks know how to build the 53 the right way. Because you could say, oh, we need to keep this guy and pay him. And then that could take away from two other positions that may be more beneficial to you guys winning games. So Aaron Rodgers is a good quarterback. Aaron Rodgers is not a good GM. But the one pushback I'll have in terms of Rodgers to the Steelers and why I think it can happen, we've seen Mike Tomlin deal with some big names. Now, I know that the microscope Rodgers is under. But when Mike Tomlin was dealing with Antonio Brown in Pittsburgh, remember when he got traded to the Raiders? What did people say initially? That's it? That's all they got? And then you saw the disaster in the Bleep Show. That was Antonio Brown since leaving Pittsburgh, where he didn't even make it to one regular season game with the Raiders, then played for the Patriots, played one game, caught a touchdown up against Miami, celebrated the end zone, and then was cut shortly after that. And even in Tampa Bay, guy wins a Super Bowl. The next year, he acts like a jackass running off the field because he had some issue with Bruce Arians. And, I know that Antonio Brown has tried to justify that in years past and be like, oh, I was trying to get forced to put in when I was injured, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry. If you give Antonio Brown the benefit of the doubt, you're like the biggest clown on the planet. I don't care what he claims. I can't give Antonio Brown any benefit of the doubt. Has an entertaining social media feed. There is no doubt about that. But I can't give him the benefit of the doubt about being in the right on anything. So if Tomlin was able to keep Antonio Brown in check, and I know it's a little bit different, or kind of keep whatever Antonio Brown was doing a secret. And I know Antonio Brown was an elite wide receiver then, so it makes it easier to put up with. Rodgers is no longer an elite quarterback, but could Rodgers still be a top 10 quarterback? Yeah. And when was the last time the Steelers had a top 10 quarterback? What are we looking at? Mason Rudolph, Duck Hodges, Kenny Pickett, Justin Fields, Russell Wilson. Like, those have been their quarterbacks since Big Ben's body did break down. So I could actually see, if you really want to go back to what Big Ben was accused of, and then you look at also when you take a glance at Antonio Brown and the things that did go on with Antonio Brown. I know he wasn't a star, but, Mike Tomlin, did coach Mike Vick. Mike Vick was a star at one point, not when he was in Pittsburgh. And we know what Mike Vick went to the Slammer for. So for Aaron Rodgers, yeah, he could be a pain in the ass in the locker room. And then I'll have people that would tell me he's the greatest teammate he's ever had. And a lot comes with Aaron Rodgers. And I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers is a choir boy because he knows what he's doing. But sometimes I do think the Rodgers conversation, because of people's personal dislike for him, and yes, he does some wacky conspiracy theories. He says some crazy, stupid things. I'm not excusing that. But it gets to a point where you're like, oh, you can't bring him in as a quarterback. And if that's the reason why Pittsburgh can't bring him in, it's because the Rooney family has a certain culture and Mike Tomlin has a certain culture, I call cap on that. I call cap on that. I think that Mike Tomlin for a year and Aaron Rodgers for a year and the Rooney family for a year could put up with whatever comes with Aaron Rodgers. Because if you don't, what are you going to? You going back to Russell Wilson or Justin Fields? You're not getting a quarterback in the first round. Like, if you bring in Sam Darnold, you want to go younger? Okay. That's at least a move that you make for the future. But if you're just going to a veteran that isn't a long-term commitment, I don't see why you wouldn't just bring Aaron Rodgers for a year. What's the risk? It's low risk, high reward. There's more to gain here for Mike Tomlin. You haven't won a playoff game since the 2016 season. If you get a good version of Aaron Rodgers, and yes, they have to improve that line, but you have George Pickens, and you take a glance on the defensive side of the ball, and let's say they bounce back to being the Steelers that we expect on the defense, I'm not saying that they're going to win a Super Bowl next year, but they could win a playoff game with Aaron Rodgers next year. That's for sure. Here was Ty Dunne with us earlier. Ty Dunne is sort of leaning right now that Aaron Rodgers gets the Bill Belichick treatment, and he could see Aaron Rodgers actually getting shut out in this free agency period?
I think this is Bill Belichick in quarterback form. I think that he probably wants to play, wants to start, wants to make money, and I'll be surprised if a team gives him that opportunity. I don't know how a GM, a head coach, hell, an owner can see what happened in Green Bay, can see what happened with the New York Jets, and allow Aaron Rodgers to nuke your building in the same form and fashion. Is he really going to want to start for a team at quarterback and just play quarterback? I would be shocked if that's the case for somebody that we've seen the same storyline play out again and again and again. It's bringing the buddies, whether they're coaches, whether they're players. It's pseudo GM, assistant to the assistant GM, Dwight Schrute-esque. I don't know. It's so obvious at this point, right? It's not just one of us kind of trying to explain this to people from conversations behind the scenes. It was on full public display. I would, even though there are a lot of options out there at quarterback via trade, free agency, the draft, I don't know why any team would do it.
So you think he's getting shut out completely is what you're saying?
It's a gut feeling. Bill Belichick is the greatest coach ever, and nobody wanted him to come in, completely take over a building, right? You bring in Bill Belichick, it's not just to coach the team. There's a lot more that goes into it than just saying Aaron Rodgers is a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback. Of course he should start day one. You're bringing in a lot more than that, just like you're bringing in a lot more than just Bill Belichick coaching your defense, coaching your team. I don't know. Maybe there's a desperate owner out there, but Woody Johnson, not one of the best owners, to put it mildly. So he was duped. The Jets were duped. I don't know who will get duped again.
This is also the other part of the conversation. If, let's say, the Rams keep Stafford and the Steelers say thanks but no thanks, is Rodgers going to want to play? And Rodgers, to me, I don't think likes getting told what to do. So if the Steelers are like thanks but no thanks and the Rams are like thanks but no thanks, it's like I would then say, hey, I had a good run. I'm out. I'm going to retire. I'm a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's what I would do. But I could then see Rodgers going to an obscure spot right now for him in terms of those teams aren't ready in a Cleveland or Tennessee or even the Raiders. And then it's just like, okay, you're playing to just pad stats for one more year and just go out on a decent note. I don't see why you would end up doing that. But if he starts to get shut out, maybe he makes it so advantageous for a team to bring him in. I also find it funny when people go, and I know it's all different reasons, but people go with Aaron Rodgers, like Herm Edwards. I don't know if he fits the culture of Mike Tomlin and Art Rooney. Excuse me, the Rooney family. And then you get to Ty Dunne. I think he's going to get shut out. And then you look at the Steelers, and you look at the players on their team right now. Is George Pickens a great culture guy? George Pickens is a really good young wide receiver. He's a me guy, right? And if he catches the ball, he acts like he just is, just won the Super Bowl and he's Jerry Rice. The ball doesn't go his way, he becomes a malcontent. And that's been a problem where Tomlin has even criticized him before about it. But here's an interesting one. This is George Pickens with Chris Henry Jr. And this is via the Overtime Season on TikTok. This is from August when George Pickens is talking about who his dream teammate would be. Listen up.
Yeah, what's your dream teammate, past or present?
My dream teammate would probably be like Joe Burrow or like T. Higgins, because they like the Bengals, my favorite team. They're my favorite players. So.
Nah, for sure. My dream teammate would probably be Aaron Rodgers.
Okay.
Aaron Rodgers or like Ed Reed or something like that. Ed Rodgers,
So,
Ed Reed, yeah.
I see that.
So interesting. He says his dream teammate would be Ed Reed, who doesn't play anymore, right? And Aaron Rodgers, who still plays. So I know that's from August, but George Pickens, who could be a problem, be a pain in the ass, you go get him Aaron Rodgers. Hey, I know Garrett Wilson was looking forward to playing with Aaron Rodgers. It didn't work out. George Pickens that has no leg to stand on and being upset next year. So I would like to see Rodgers, if Stafford leaves the Rams or if the Rams get rid of Stafford, I would then think Rodgers and the Rams for a year makes sense. But then also, I think the Steelers make sense as well right now. Unless if they're going to go give a long-term deal to Sam Darnold, which I'm skeptical if they're going to end up doing that. But outside of that, I really have no interest to see Rodgers play anywhere else for this upcoming year, out of the realistic options. All right, this is Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We'll take a break. We'll do a little news brief next.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
listening to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
Four Nations final tonight. USA tries to beat up on Canada twice in a week. That would be something. And it'd be a big blow to the egos of all those Canadians that we're going to be at war with tonight. So that's going to be fun coming up at 8 p.m. Eastern. Jeremy Roenick, the Hockey Hall of Famer, did join us about 2 hours ago. And he explained why this game is actually more important to Canada tonight rather than the U.S. Listen up.
It'd be really special because you're right, because the United States has really taken the biggest leap in terms of its quality of hockey. I mean, we are a world superpower. And there are a lot of people who are saying that we are at the same level, if not maybe a little bit better than Canada right now, which who would ever thought that? And I know Canada will take exception to that comment. But all these things that are happening right now, Canada needs this win tonight to kind of keep that legacy of hockey is Canada's game, right? Because I think if they lose this could be a really big blow to their psyche and to their power struggle. So it's been 10 years since we've seen the best players in the world all together put on their nation's colors. And these guys are taking it for real. This is their first opportunity to get this kind of play. And they know that they're going to hit a certain genre, a certain generation of kids that are going to watch this. They're going to say, I want to play in that game. I want to be a hockey player. If USA can win, it's going to spur those USA kids on even more. If Canada wins, it'll probably hit another group of Canadians. But that's how important that this game is on both sides. And that's why I say hockey win. Not just Canada, not just America. This hockey wins tonight regardless.
The middle part of that to me was fascinating. Because I thought going into tonight, this game was more important to the United States, right? Because, right, how many times Canada's beat us up, right? It's their sport. And, I know what happened in 2002. I remember watching as a kid, us losing the gold medal game. Then what happened in 2010, Parisi scores, and then Crosby rips all of our hearts out. And it's one thing to get that win on Saturday. But then if you're able to follow it up with another win on Thursday and you beat them twice in a week, it'd kind of be like, if Michigan played Ohio State, right, in this new version of college football, in the Big Ten, in the last week of the season, right, Thanksgiving weekend, right, Michigan, let's say, beat Ohio State, and they played the next week in the Big Ten championship, and then Michigan beat them again. Like, that's the closest thing I could think of, and one is on, just in the same sport, on the same level. The other is at a national level now. But this Four Nations thing, I didn't even really give it much thought. I know, right, hockey's going back to letting the NHL players go to the Olympics for the next Olympics, which is great next year. But it stunk that the last 2 times they weren't able to go. But it was one of those things when they said this, I'm like, whatever. It's not. I didn't think it was really that big of a deal. But to see the response, and also it's the perfect timing of it too, when we really have no sports going on, and the NBA players with their Fugazi All-Star game and their All-Star weekend gave no effort. It's been a major win for hockey. But to hear JR say it's actually more important to Canada, I didn't think about it that way because it'd be so humiliating, even though, right, we've grown leaps and bounds in America, with hockey. But this is, right, their sport. They always, look at the U.S. as gum on the bottom of their shoe. And if little brother could beat them up twice in the same week, well, then your little brother no more. 855-212-4227. 855-212-4227. Jean-Luc in Calgary. Next up on the Infinity Sports Network. Jean-Luc, what's going on before we kick your ass once again?
Bonjour, Zach. Bonjour. Oh, bonjour.
You're going to make me die on the air. I knew this wasn't Jean-Luc when I went to it. I had a feeling who this was going to be. But it is our, forget Jeremy Roenick. I love when he comes on the show, and I love JR. But this is the resident hockey expert for the Zach Gelb Show, who was in Canada when they were booing our national anthem. And Sully was there, boots on the ground, and I'm assuming you're in Boston tonight for the big final, right?
Oh, buddy, boots on the ground, yes. Unfortunately, no. There was too many days in between the game on Monday and tonight. Yeah, we left right after Canada, Sweden.
Okay.
Buddy, I got things to do. I mean, listen, there is not a better place to watch a hockey game than the Bell Center in Montreal. I don't care what anyone says. If anyone disagrees, because they've never seen a game at the Bell Center in Montreal. I unfortunately, didn't get to go to the Forum, the old school one, but I'll tell you, the atmosphere was electric for all the games. Yeah, so they booed the national anthem. Who cares? They have to live in Canada. That's all. No big deal. So they boo the anthem, and then the Kachuk brothers go absolutely bananas.
Yeah.
And then JT Miller gets in a fight, and he's out of his weight class, but he still gets into a fight. And then McJesus scored, and the building, the roof blew off that building, Zach. I have never and will never be at a better live sporting event than what I got to witness and be live at for USA Canada on Saturday.
I'm really surprised.
Tonight,
And I know you're a busy guy, but I'm surprised you're not doing a little Regina pizza tonight and you're going to the game. I'm really shocked by this, Sully.
Well, we had Regina pizza after the game Monday, and then we flew back home. Zach, I got things to do, buddy. I can't just take random vacations for 2 weeks to Montreal and Boston to watch hockey. I wish I could. Trust me, I wish I could.
So where's
Now,
your
mind
confidence, by the way, tonight? Because I'm going to be honest. Obviously, I want the U.S. to win. I'm not like Samter, who's rooting for Canada, that traitor. But I'm nervous because to beat them twice in a few days, once was awesome. Twice would just be unbelievable. But that's so tough to do with how deep they are.
Where's my confidence level? I got 1,000 going on USA versus my friend in Canada.
Really? Big bet here for Sully.
It's Canadian money. It's Canadian money, so it's like $520. But hey, it's 1,000 Canadian. Yeah, because he wanted to do it in Canadian. Fine, whatever. Also, I want to touch on something that you brought up.
Yeah.
That JR said. JR, absolute legend. I was sitting across the row from a gentleman who is the sports agent in hockey. And he said to me, within 4 to 7 years, if not already, USA will produce more talent than Canada will in hockey. And that blew me away. Blew me away when he said that.
It's a big statement, but it shows like where hockey was 15 years ago in America to where it is now. It is crazy how many like Hellebuck, I think, has the most to gain tonight because if they win, it's going to be because of him. And I know he's already won 2 Vezinas, and the Jets are awesome this year, and we'll see if they go win the Stanley Cup. But if they win tonight, I really think it's going to be because of him because he stands on his head and makes like 32 saves or something like that.
And they play a different game, Zach. You saw it Saturday. Canada was going side to side, east and west. U.S. was just laying the lumber, hitting people, hitting everybody, hitting their own teammates. What was interesting, Zach, at the end of the game, we ran into Big Walt, Kachuk's dad, and all the people wanted to take photos with him, even they were wearing their Canadian sweater. That's what I thought was interesting.
Yeah, because
everybody wanted a photo with dad.
The Suns kick your ass, and then you're trying to take photos with him. Yeah, it's a bad job by those Canadians.
It was outstanding. I am so fired up for tonight's game. I feel like it was tough to reference. You can't really give a reference as to what this game means.
That's the tricky part because it's a new thing, right? It's not the Olympics. Yeah. I think, when I first saw it, Sully, I was like, all right, whatever. But it brings out a different pride in a lot of people. And this feels, I hate to say it. I don't want to say it feels just as big as the way that I felt back in 2010 or even when I was a kid in 2002. So fired up. But it's one of those things where it's must-see TV tonight. And if you win, it's going to be a party, an American party, because we would love to dance in the grave of those Canadians and their sport being no more and now being our sport.
USA! USA! USA!
And you know what they say, Sully? You know what they say? What? Or Jean-Luc in Calgary, sorry? Great moments are born from great opportunities. And that's what you have here tonight, boys. That's what you've earned here tonight. I'm sick and tired of hearing what a great hockey team Canada has. Screw them. I can't wait for tonight, Sully.
USA! USA!
There we go. Jean-Luc in Calgary, a.k.a. Sully, who I thought was in Boston, and he's back in Vegas. That's Sully. I got to get on the Sully jet. Those frequent flyer miles where he's at all the time. And he had the best seats in the house. The best seats in the house. He was 10 rows off center ice at the Bell Center for that Saturday night brawl between Canada and the U.S. Now, I got to go to Ack because Ack is a huge hockey fan. Ack, where are you at? You fired up for tonight, or is this one of those things where it's you are?
Saturday was appointment till I was waiting all day. So,
where's your confidence level?
Not high.
I'm nervous. I'm worried.
Well, I'm worried for two reasons for Team USA. Number one, I think they have the two best players on the ice when they're on the ice, and that's McDavid and McKinnon. And secondly, I think that I think that USA is running out of some steam here. No McAvoy tonight. Matthew Tkachuk is playing, but he's banged up. Austin Matthews is not 100%. Brady Tkachuk, they kind of sat for precautionary reasons, but because they're already clinching the spot, in the finals. So I don't know. I don't know who else might be banged up on that team, but I think that they've used a lot of gas to get here.
And also, to do it once on Saturday is one thing.
Yeah, and especially the way they did it, that's going to stir you up a little. I mean, the Canadians were not happy about losing that game.
Well, it's almost funny. It's because, like, the game happened Saturday, and it was such a party, right?
Yeah.
On social media, everyone's like, hockey, 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 USA, 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 USA.
It's a long way from Saturday
and
to
then
here.
It kind of, like, dawned on all of us. Like, I was putting out some tweets. I was like, oh, Canada, we beat you on your land. Like, I was really enjoying myself. And then I'm like, oh, we could actually see them again. On Thursday, and
that's what everybody wanted. So be careful what you wish for.
And that's when kind of this chill went up my spine. I'm like, ooh, I could be a little freezing cold takes, old takes exposed coming up on late Thursday night.
The one difference, though, and look, with all due respect to the people in Boston, the game presentation in Montreal was absolutely phenomenal.
Sure,
absolutely phenomenal, and it always is. So I think that's going to be a little tough to top.
I think the booing, though. I saw Sean McDonough was like, oh, I hope we're above that. Don't boo. I think the booing tonight in Boston, Beantown's going to be booing. You booed during our national anthem, we'll give it right back to you.
Well, I understand why they booed. I wish it would have just stopped there, but hey, people are people.
Yeah.
They're going to do what they do.
I think it's going to be a good boo sight tonight in Boston. That start's going to be electric. Electric. All righty, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. We'll do a news brief next. Update time first. Here's the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
Well, Zach Martin's Hall of Fame career is coming to an end. The 34-year-old has reportedly told the Cowboys he's going to retire. In 11 seasons, he was a 7-time All-Pro, the most by a guard, tied with Randall McDaniel and John Hanna. The Spurs were dealt quite a blow today. Their star, Victor Wembanyama, is lost for the season. The 20-year-old has a blood clot in his shoulder and is coming off his first All-Star selection after leading the NBA in blocks and scoring over 24 points and 11 rebounds a game. The Bucks won't have Bobby Portis back until the final few games of the regular season. The veteran forward was suspended 25 games by the NBA for taking tramadol, a banned substance. The 30-year-old said he thought he was taking Toradol, which is certainly okay to use. The All-Star break is over with 9 games on the schedule tonight, starting with the Celtics and Sixers in Philly at 7 Eastern. Cleveland goes for its 45th win in Brooklyn. Aaron Boone is entering his 8th season as Yankee manager, and on this eve of spring training, he gets a new 2-year extension. The NHL's Four Nations tournament will be decided tonight in Boston, where the United States hosts Canada. The Americans won the previous matchup Saturday behind great defense, but they won't have Charlie McAvoy tonight, who's out with a shoulder infection. I'm Rich Ackerman.
This is the Infinity Sports Network. Follow us on Instagram. Our handle is Infinity Sports Network. That's Infinity Sports Network to follow us on Instagram.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick. From the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
Oh, my God. We're back again.
This portion of the show is brought to you by Ethos Life, the easy way to get life insurance in 10 minutes, up to $2 million in coverage, no medical exam, just a few health questions. Get your free quote at checkethos.com. Not available in all states. Zach Gelb Show, Infinity Sports Network. Without further ado, I'm not talking about Freddie Adu. It's time to update you on some of the biggest stories of the world of sports with some audio. Let's get to a news brief.
Time for your daily news brief. We get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
All right, let's listen up to the Let's Go podcast with Jim Gray. Bill Belichick was asked about quarterbacks and trying to find them. And in that process, he ends up throwing a little shot at the Jets.
How do you find a quarterback?
Well, you might take a look at the ones that the Jets have released, Geno Smith and Sam Darnold. They've done pretty well. Guys that nobody really wanted, and they've played pretty well.
And remember the report Belichick asked the Jets, right? He tried to call the Jets to see if he could be their head coach. Bunch of baloney. He may have just dangled the carrot. I don't know if there's an amount of money in the world that Belichick would take to coach the Jets. He despises the New York Jets, and he keeps on twisting that knife deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Let's go to Shams Charania. He was on to ESPN, and he explained the Victor Wembanyama news from today.
The Spurs right now believe that this is an isolated condition, that there's one form of a blood clot in that right shoulder of his that will sideline him for the remainder of the season. There's no spread, that there's nothing more here, and that he's going to be ready to go for the offseason and for the 2025-2026 season.
So they hope. That's what they hope. And we all hope this is an isolated situation. But with that being said, Dr. Brandon J. Erickson joined us earlier, about an hour ago, and he said there's no way to know right now if the Victor Wembanyama blood clot is an isolated situation. Because they're going to give him medicine, they're going to see what happens if it spreads. He did say it's rare for it to be in the shoulder. It's more common in your legs. But this is in the shoulder. Doesn't make it more dangerous. Doc made that clear. And I'm not pretending to be a doctor. I'm just going off the doctor and the medical personnel, but that's what he told us on the show. So there's no way to know right now. But yeah, you'd be optimistic and be hopeful that this is going to be it for Victor Wembanyama, and then he can come on back next year and make a full recovery, not only so he can continue to live his life, but also so he could go play in the NBA. Let's go to Sam Quinn. He was on CBS Sports HQ on Victor Wembanyama's season-ending blood clot.
My initial reaction is fear. I mean, when you're talking about blood clots, this is a medical condition that has ended careers. I mean, most notably, Chris Bosh was still an all-star when he had his first clot. It didn't take long for his career to end after that. Mirza Teletovic, a good role player for the Milwaukee Bucks, blood clots ended his career as well. We hope this is an isolated incident, and there are cases in recent NBA history of players having an isolated incident like this and coming back just fine. The one that comes to mind is Brandon Ingram, who had a clot because of a shoulder injury. He's gone on to have a productive, healthy career for the most part. So with something like this goes beyond basketball. This is a scary medical condition that can affect you on the court and off. So for now, I have to give the caveat that I'm not a doctor, but you hear blood clots with anybody and you get scared.
Yeah, it's extremely scary, right? You hear blood clot, and that's like, oh my goodness gracious. You think about the person first before you think about the athlete first. I know that in a lot of times what we do, we just get caught up to, okay, when is the guy going to be able to come back? When he's going to be able to come back and play? That's definitely a thought. But the first thing that when you hear this, you say, okay, I hope Victor Wembanyama, the person, is okay. And it's scary. And this would be so unfortunate, not only for his health, but also for his career. If, right, we've seen Victor Wembanyama play in the U.S., play in the NBA for a year and a half, and if this becomes a lingering issue, it's not only something that derails his career, it also could derail his life, which is scary. And once again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to pretend here like I know everything, but you just hope that this is an isolated incident, because if not, then it's just absolutely horrible. Let's go to Shams Charania back on the ESPN. He discussed Giannis Antetokounmpo's future in Milwaukee.
Everyone knows Giannis Antetokounmpo loves the Bucks, but I'm here to tell you he loves winning more, and that's why everyone within that Bucks organization, they know what's at stake this season. They know the pressure, and every summer when Giannis looks around and he looks at the Bucks' current roster, he looks at sustained long-term winning. Where will he be able to find that? And he has said publicly on the record, if he feels like that's not attainable anymore in Milwaukee, he will look elsewhere.
I feel like we hear this once a year. And we keep on seeing Giannis staying and re-signing with the Milwaukee Bucks. Here's the thing, though. They made the big move here. Like, the last time this was there, they had to go make a big move. They made the big move. They got Dame. And last year, it didn't work out. Now they're basically playing two coaches at once, right? Because Griffin's no longer there. You brought in Doc Rivers. You gave him the big, fat contract. And this year, the East is up there for the taking. Yeah, I know that the Cavs are having an unbelievable season. Is anyone confident the Cavs are going to be there at the end of the year and they're going to be going to the NBA Finals? I'm not. Because we've seen teams just explode in the regular season, and come postseason time, they go out earlier than what their record would indicate they should go out in. So I look at the Celtics, I look at the Knicks, I look at the Bucks. I would still anticipate one of those three teams going to the NBA Finals. But maybe if, 2 years together with Dame, they don't get the job done, they just got rid of Chris Middleton, they made the move for Kuzma. If you don't feel like you go win another championship, is it the craziest thing to say that Giannis, who has shown so much love to Milwaukee, will leave? I don't think it's the craziest, right? We just looked at a time where Luka Doncic just got traded. But he's under contract through 26-27, through the 2027 season. And then he got a player option. That's the first time he could actually say I'm opting out is 2027, 2028 for that season. That's a player option. But with that being said, we've seen players before have a contract, especially in the NBA, and find their way out. All righty, Stu, I want to ask you this before I play it. What were your thoughts last night of the ending of the Lakers-Hornets game?
Oh, it was lovely. I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, they played bad the whole game. They kind of deserve what they got.
Are you okay with who took the final shot?
I am. He's still LeBron.
Yeah.
I wasn't too mad about it.
Okay, because I've seen that be the big. I get it's a low-hanging fruit. Who should get the final shot?
For
is
sure.
it LeBron?
You're gonna
or is
get a
it
lot of that.
Or is it Luka Doncic? The ironic part is we've had these discussions before. How many times is it we want LeBron to shoot?
Yeah, he
and
doesn't.
it's LeBron passes it off, like when he was in Cleveland, and he would always pass it off. So it's one of those things where you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Yep.
Here is JJ Redick, though, my favorite coach in the NBA. LeBron James taking the last shot over Luka Doncic.
As a coach, you're excited that you have two guys that can be the passer and be the guy who gets the pass. But felt like, LeBron, particularly in the fourth, just, found a nice rhythm and felt really comfortable with that. And we got two good looks.
And let's get to Luka Doncic on LeBron taking the last shot.
Yeah, I mean, it's both ways. He had it going, so obviously we're going to go to him. I think it go both ways, so one time it's going to be him, one time me. So I think it depends how the games go.
By the way, how about what's been made after the aftermath of this with the Mark Williams deal? When, that comes back up last night and the Dalton Connect trade and all that. It seemed as if a lot of people believe, Stu, that he should not have flunked his physical.
It does seem like that. Almost like they regretted the decision to make the trade in the first place. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's a weird one. It's very weird.
Maybe with LeBron being more out of the loop, LeBron's like, why the heck are we trading Dalton Connect? I don't know.
Yeah.